Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a long time. You all have been expecting videos from me. It's been 2 months now since I've done the last LinkedIn build, and before that 3 months the Twitter one, and everyone's been expecting videos. And I apologize for the delay, and I tried my best to finish this as soon as possible, but I always try to make it up for the delays and stuff. And here this is one of the examples what we have done today. So I present you all the ultimate Netflix clone or redesign, whatever you want to think of, but the ultimate, it's a SaaS application. So let me show you all the features of this whole Netflix right now. So we have scrollable containers here, and this is using a API, a REST API on the back, by the way. It's using the TMDB, the latest REST API, the version 3 of TMDB API. And you can see we have all these movies and all these scrollable containers, and when I click on any of this, I cannot play, by the way, but this is actually functional. It's with actually sound. So this is deployed, and I provided the link in the description, so you can see it's a deployed build. So you guys can go and check it out. You all can go and check it out there. So this is actually with sound. It's actually playing with sound, and this is actually the trailer playing, right? And this is the model. This is a material UI model we're using, and if I click here, it's gonna actually add this to our list. And if I actually click here, this is actually dynamic, as you all can see. So if I actually add this to my list, if I close this and I go, you can see this movie has been added, or TV series has been added to my list here. And if I try to do with this one, let's say this is Spider-Man. Let me show you all my favorite. My favorite is actually the one Doctor Strange. It's gonna come in May. So if I add Doctor Strange, let's say, and it's saying it has been added to my list. If I go again, you can see it's right there in my list. And this is just the beginning, guys. So we have the changing header, basically. So when you scroll, the background's changing for the header. And every time I refresh this, and there are so many features we are going to be building in this one. There are a lot of features. So every time, so right now it actually picked the same random movie, but it should actually change. So twice I actually picked the same. Yeah, it changed there, as you can see. So every time I refresh the page, the movie actually changes. It blends in. So right now it's again changed right now, as you all can see. Now I'm logged into the application, so I can actually, it has complete authentication with Firebase. So I can click on my profile, and this is actually my account page. As you can see, we are actually on a different page right now. Here we have done a dark mode for Netflix, because as opposed to Netflix has a light mode for their account. So this is the actual Netflix. So if I actually go, this is a light mode, but we have actually implemented a dark mode here, and we are on a premium plan right now. So if I actually sign out and sign in with a new account, let's just say, and this has validation, by the way. So there's just a lot of stuff in this build. So if I try to log in with a new account, let's say this one, and I keep the password as Iron Man, or actually, yeah. And if I try to sign in, you can see it will give me a prompt here from Firebase that user not found, because I'm not a user currently. So I'll have to sign up. So I'll click on sign up. And as soon as I do that, I'm actually signed up right now, and you can see I have an account, but it's actually not showing me the actual application, because I'm not subscribed yet to the application, right? So it's actually showing me 3 plans, and this is all dynamic, by the way. If I refresh this, you all can see this is server-side rendered, these plans. So these are dynamic from the actually from the database, from Firebase. So these are all dynamic, actually. So we have 3 plans inside of our Firebase, inside of our Stripe. They're basic, standard, and premium, just like the Netflix model. These are the prices, and we have created this beautiful responsive UI. As you all can see, this is a beautiful responsive UI. Actually changes just like Netflix, works exactly like that. So if I select the standard plan, and if I click on subscribe, there's a beautiful loading which happens to show us that it's actually loading the thing. And this is where the Stripe checkout comes in. So this is the Stripe checkout, guys. And now I can actually enter, and this is a testing mode, so I can enter 42, which is the card for testing on Stripe. So if I actually enter my card, and I can just say Iron Man, because that was my email, and this is just my address, and I can use Google Pay as well, and these are just the features. We can have some features in Stripe as well. So if I actually subscribe, and this is a Stripe authentication, so this is actually a very secure Stripe payment portal. So we haven't implemented this by ourselves, but this Stripe is actually giving us. Now I'm subscribed, and as soon as I click the subscribe button, I'm actually redirected back to the app, and I can see all the movies, but I'm a different user, so of course I don't see the my list and stuff. Now if I go to my dashboard, this is my account, it's actually gonna show us my member date, and I just subscribed right now, so it's 13 April, and it's actually showing me the GMT time, you know, and here's my email, and here's my next billing date, which is of course after 1 month, right? So it's actually 13 May, and I have a plan, so it's showing me standard plan. Now if I click on cancel membership, this works too. So this is actually going to take us to a customer portal using Stripe again, and again it's loading right now. As soon as this loads up, here we go, this is a customer portal. We'll see now I can actually cancel my plan and update my plan. So we have 3 plans, so I can update to 2 other plans, or if I actually try to cancel this, it's actually going to cancel the plan, but at the end of the billing period, so I'll still have access to the application. So if I go back now, right now it says your membership will end on Friday, and this is how Netflix does it, guys. This is how Netflix works, by the way. Netflix actually tells you if you cancel the membership, they actually tell you the membership is going to end on 13 May. Before it was telling me it was my next billing date. So now if I go back to the app, I still have access because I still have time up to 13 May. And we can see the movies changed. Again, I can click on the modal. These are all functional, showing me the trailers. And yeah, this is the whole functionality. I can sign out. So if I actually sign out, it redirects me back to login page. And if I actually try to go back, I cannot access it anymore. And this is what we're gonna be building. I'm really excited. This is one of the sickest builds out there. And I'm sure of it. Like, there's just so much functionality, so much information, and the tech stack for this, we're going to be using Next.js, Tailwind CSS. We're going to be using Firebase version 9. We're also going to be using TypeScript. So everyone wanted me to teach TypeScript, to use TypeScript in one of the builds, and I'm going to be using TypeScript. And there's just a lot of stuff. There's Material UI. There's React hook forms or validation. So I try to sign in, you can see this is validation. So yeah, there's just so much stuff in this build, so it's gonna be sick. So let's get started with this actually. So I'm just gonna quickly log in to my deployed application, and today, it's gonna be a 3 days build because of the complexity and the number of hours you're going to be putting into this build. I think it's really important that everyone digest the information we learn every single day. So I'm aiming for 3 days actually. So it's going to be starting today. Today we are going to be building this whole UI, our homepage UI, a very slick UI with all these scrollable containers and every single thing. So we're going to be building this whole scrollable, the home UI. And tomorrow we can do the authentication or Stripe maybe, or maybe day after tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be going to our tailwindcss.com, the beautiful UI framework we're going to be using. It's a utility. So if you're new to Tailwind CSS, if anyone's new to Tailwind CSS, is basically a utility for CSS framework. And what it does, it actually gives you these really nice utility classes which you can use to build components like this, beautiful components like this, you can see, and it is really powerful. It's really insane because you can build really good UI components in just a matter of minutes, without having to spend so much time in the traditional CSS way. So, and if you feel like you want to use traditional CSS, just go ahead, do that. But I'm going to be using Tailwind, and Tailwind is extremely really nice, and it helps you build responsive UI really easily. So let's get started. I'm going to click on Get Started. I'm going to click on Framework Guides, And next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Next.js, because we are going to be using Next.js. And if anyone's actually new to Next.js, Next.js is the same as React, guys. Next.js is not something else. Next.js is React, but it's actually built on top of React. So what happens is it actually gives us really good developer features like image optimization, SEO improvement and stuff, and it actually gives us TypeScript support. There's the best features of Next.js are server-side rendering, ISR, which is incremental static regeneration, and all these really good features. And we're going to be using server-side rendering, which is super important in applications nowadays, especially in web applications. It has fast refresh and has a lot of good features. You guys can look up to it here on their official website. So we're going to be using Next.js is built on top of React, and we're going to be using Tailwind for the UI. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually click on this example link here, and I'm actually going to copy this and what this is going to do. And next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open my terminal. So this is my terminal. I don't know if you all can see it. I'm going to make it bigger. So this is my terminal. Now I'm going to actually paste this command here. I'm just going to change the name of the project. So, or actually not here. I'm actually going to first of all actually see. I have to go inside of my desktop, actually inside of my documents, sorry, and I have this folder called builds, so I have to go inside of my builds, and here is where I'm going to paste this command again. I'm just going to remove the with Tailwind. I'm going to just change this is the name of my folder, so I'm just going to change this to Netflix clone YouTube, right? I'm just going to press enter. And what this is gonna do basically is that it's gonna bootstrap our application with Next.js, TypeScript, and Tailwind CSS, so we don't have to go through the configure steps by ourselves, which basically means we don't have to go through these steps. So if I go back to Tailwind again, so we don't have to go through these steps by ourselves, all these steps. This is manual configuration, and using the example allows us to configure, and it's gonna give us the latest versions of Next.js, Tailwind, and everything. So that's like really clean. And here we go, it's actually installed really fast. Now all we have to do is have to cd into our directory. So I'm just gonna cd into my directory, cd into this. I'm just gonna type code dot to open this directly inside of my Visual Studio Code. And if you cannot do code dot, just open it manually, your folder which we have initialized. And if you're not getting this command, all you have to do is shell, type command shift P and type shell. So you'll get this install code command, and all you have to do is press enter here, and it's gonna install the command I used on the terminal. So this is our Bootstrap application. Okay, this is our and by Bootstrap I don't mean the UI Bootstrap. This is the initialized application. So we get our index page. So for anyone who's new to Next.js, I always like to give a good introduction before starting to work on Next.js and Tailwind. So what basically Next.js does is it has a pages directory, and it has inbuilt file system routing, and you can read more about it again on the Next.js documentation which I showed you. So what I basically mean by file system routing, it has, so this index.tsx which we see, which is by the way TypeScript, so it's TSX, which means TypeScript. This is actually our home page, and anything which is inside of our pages directory actually becomes a page inside of Next.js. So if I actually open my terminal, and if I actually start my server, and I'm just gonna check something out, that if I have package, so I have package.log, so I have to use npm. This is how I basically determine whether to use npm or yarn. If you want to use yarn, you can use yarn as well. So I'm going to say npm run dev, right? And this is going to basically run the server, and I'm actually going to cut the server somewhere else because I have two servers running. So on my old application, I'm actually going to quickly cut the server so I can run, so I can basically run localhost 3000 instead of 3001. So I'm going to run it again, and now it's saying started server on localhost 3000. So I'm just going to quickly go to localhost 3000. Here we go. This is our application in the beginning. It's saying welcome to Next.js, get started by editing, and this is our home page, by the way. So if I close this, you can see it is our home page. Now what I mean by file system routing is, for example, if I create another file inside of my pages, and if I say login, right, login.tsx. Okay, and I use these snippets. So if you want to install these snippets, just go to extension, and these are called ES7, ES6, ES7 React Redux. These ones, ES7 plus React Redux, React Native snippets. So if you install this, you can use these snippets like just by saying RFCE, and it's gonna give you the whole functional component code. And I'm just gonna quickly change login to capital L. Okay, I'm going to remove React because we don't need import React from React anymore. So this is the login, and what I mean by the system-based routing is that if I try to navigate to /login, here we actually see a page called login because we actually created this page. So this is what happens inside of Next.js. But if I try to go to a page called sign up, it's actually not going to work. It's going to give us a 404 default page, and Next.js actually does this by default. So if any page is not found, it actually gives you 404. Which is not found, right? So, and this is really cool. This is a really good feature about Next.js because we don't have to use a React router when as opposed to when we are developing in React. So this is a really good feature of Next.js. So now, of course, we'll have a login page. If I go to my finished, this is our finished app. And if I actually sign out, you can see we do have a login. This is our login page. But right now we're going to be focusing on building the beautiful UI, the home page, which we have. So I'm just going to quickly log in to my actual application. Here we go. Today we're going to be building this home page. So we complete a complex portion of the UI. So right now I'm just going to quickly go back to my local host 3000. And this is our Next.js app. Now let's start by creating this whole. Now the first thing I always like to do is I always remove this because of course we're not going to be needing this a bunch of stuff here. And I'm just going to type let's build Netflix or something. And what I like to do is I'll actually make this side by side so it'll be easier for everyone to see. So we have let's build Netflix here. Now let's get started with our index page. So the things we're going to be having on our index page, actually, we're going to be having a main tag, right? And I always like to use semantic HTML as opposed to just using divs and divs, because I've seen a lot of videos people just use divs and stuff. And it's okay, of course you can use this, but using semantic HTML actually improves your SEO. Which is of course the SEO performance, and that is why the main reason we're using Next.js is because of that reason. And Next.js actually gives us these really powerful head components, all these image optimization, image components, head components, and what they actually do is if I change this head component to let's say home, and if I change this to Netflix, right, if I save this, if I hover over my page here, you can see this is changed. So this is why Next.js is really, really nice and actually gives us for each individual page. So the structure we're going to be having is we're going to be having a main tag, and inside of our main, we're going to be having a banner, and this is going to be a component, and then we're going to have a section. Okay, and this section is going to contain a bunch of rows, and you can just say a different bunch of rows. So I'm just going to say row like this. It's going to contain some bunch of rows, and then outside of our section, outside of our main tag, actually we're going to have another component which is going to be for our modal, because when we actually click on any of these, and this is responsive, by the way. I forgot to show you guys, show you all the responsiveness. So this is completely responsive on phone screen sizes, as you can see. So if I actually try to open something right now, we can see we can actually this is the modal, right? So this is what I'm talking about, the modal component. So I'm just going to close this now. Let's actually make this side by side again. Now let's actually work on our header, and we're going to have header outside of our main, of course. So here is where we're going to have our header component. So we're going to have a header component, a banner component, a row component, and a modal. And this is going to be the architecture of our application. Okay, so let's start with the header first. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a new folder, and everything we're going to do will be in TypeScript, by the way. So I'm going to be teaching you all interfaces, types, and that is the main reason I tried to divide this into 3 different days, so we can learn a lot of stuff but on a slower pace, so we understand what we're doing. So we have a components directory, And inside of our components, I'm gonna create a new file called header, and I'm gonna say tsx. And in my previous video, you have seen me using JS, but now we are using TypeScript, so I'm gonna use tsx, which is our TypeScript, right? And the reason using this template, which we are using right now, is because it actually configured TypeScript automatically for us. So we don't have to configure TypeScript, because when you're doing manually, you have to actually configure TypeScript too. So actually configure TypeScript for us. As you can see, we have a tsconfig.json with just a set of compiler options, and what it does is instructs the TypeScript compiler how to compile the .ts files, right? And we have some prettier and post CSS config. So let's start by building the header component. So the header is gonna look like this. As you can see, as we scroll, it actually turns, the background actually turns black. And we have this material UI. I don't know if I showed you all this, but we have this material UI menu with a really nice animation. It looks very similar to Netflix. So what we're gonna do is RFCE. I'm gonna remove the React thing. We're not gonna be needing React. And the first thing, I'll actually wanna see header here. So what I'll do is I'll remove let's build with Netflix, and instead of our comment, I'm actually gonna render out our header. And this is auto import, by the way. So it actually gives us auto import, and actually auto imported our header. And if you're not getting these auto import sessions, the way you get it is by pressing command space, control space, sorry, at the end of your component name. So if you're not getting this, just import manually. It's fine. It's completely fine. So I'm gonna save this, and as you can see, we have our header here. And the reason it's actually in the center right now is because of this styling at the top here, which is done with Tailwind, right? And if you wanna, if you're using Tailwind for the first time, I suggest you all install something called Tailwind IntelliSense. So it's actually called Tailwind CSS IntelliSense. This is the extension. I want you all to install this if you're using Tailwind for the first time, because it's gonna give us autocomplete suggestions and stuff, and it's actually really easy. Even if you're learning or using Tailwind for the first time, it's completely beginner friendly. This build is completely beginner friendly. It's for everyone. Even if you're a beginner, it's really easy to learn Tailwind. So we have our header, and let's start building our header component. So inside of our header component, what we're going to be having is, first I'm going to change our outer div to actually semantic header. And this is again my personal preference. I like to use semantic HTML. Now I'm going to have a div for the left side and another div actually for my right side. So I'm going to have two divs, one for the left and one for the right image. And I'm quickly going to get that image from my components actually. So I suggest you all do the same thing. So what you can do is go to my repo, which is linked in the description. Just open the components folder, and inside of header we can get this image. So I'm going to quickly copy this image. Now I'm going to go back here, and this is my image, and I have a set width and height and a class name of cursor pointer and object contain. The reason I'm using object contain is because to maintain the aspect ratio of the image, you know, the height and the width. And the reason I'm actually not using the Next.js image component, if you want you can use it, but since this is an SVG image, actually you can see this is an SVG image, it's a very high resolution image, and Next.js you have to do something called dangerously allow SVG elements or something to use SVG image, and I didn't want to get into that sort of stuff right now. But if you want, you can use the Next.js image component if you all want to. So we have the logo here, and with the logo we're gonna have some UL, some links, right? And these links are gonna be, I'm gonna say they're gonna be like 5 links. I'm just gonna say LI multiplied by 5, and this is, by the way, Emmet. So if you don't know about what I just did now, is I'm using Emmet, right? So, and what Emmet actually does, it's by default enabled in VS Code, and what actually allows you to use quick shortcuts like this. For example, if I have a UL, I can do something like UL greater than LI multiplied by 5, which means it's gonna give me 5 LIs inside of my UL. So if I press enter, this is a quick way of doing development, you know. I'm just gonna type home here, and there's gonna be TV shows, and there's gonna be movies, and then there's gonna be new and popular, So I'm just gonna quickly type them out, new and popular, and there's gonna be the last one is actually gonna be my list. And if I save this, we have our links here. So we have our logo, we have our links. The next thing I'm gonna do is actually, so I have this div, right? And let's actually style this so we can see some styling here. So for the whole container div, I'm actually gonna say flex. And again, if you're new to Tailwind CSS, by just installing that extension which I told, or what you can do is when I'm typing these styles, you can hover over them and see what CSS property is actually applying, what this actually means, and it's equivalent of saying display flex, and this is just a utility class. So if I say flex, it's gonna come side by side, right? And now I can say item center, and I want to give some spacing between the two, so I'm just gonna say spacex of 2. And I'm gonna use a breakpoint, and that's a medium breakpoint, and a medium breakpoint means it's from, and a note here for everyone is that when we're working with responsiveness in Tailwind using Tailwind CSS is actually mobile responsive first, which means that right now we're actually building for phone screen sizes, from the smaller screen sizes to the bigger screen sizes. So instead of using max width media queries, we actually use the min width media queries, which is for mobile first approach, right? Because everything we're building right now is for phone first, and then we're gonna move to bigger screen sizes. So all these stylings I'm doing, these are all for phone right now. So right now I want to change some styling when it actually reaches the MD breakpoint, which is of course the medium breakpoint inside, which is 768 pixels, and I want the spacing to increase by 10. I want the spacing to become 10. And if I actually hover over this, actually shows us the media query. So the media query is actually a min width media query, and it's saying as it reaches 768 pixels, and I can show you all this as soon as I do this. So as soon as I reach 768 pixels, it gives more spacing, as we can see here. By default, it's just spacex of 2, and this is a really good utility class inside. And what it does, it works like the gap basically, and gives margin between the children rather than giving the margin after this child too, because we don't want to do that, right? So it only gives margin between the children. Now I'm gonna style my UL, and I'm gonna say by default I want this UL to be hidden, because think about it, on our phone screen, right? This is our phone screen. We don't see any of the links. All the links are inside of our menu, and this is actually our separate component. This is a separate component which you're gonna be creating, right? So what we can do here is we can say our links in our UL can be hidden, right? Which is the unordered list, right? And a spacex of 4. And I only wanted to, of course, I only want my UL to show when it's above 768 pixels, 768 or more than that, right? And right now, because I'm less than 768, it's actually hiding the UL. As soon as I go bigger, we can see the UL back, and I have some spacing between them. And now I'm gonna individually style each of my allies. And this is why, this is the reason why I actually like Tailwind so much, is because in Tailwind we can, so many people have these questions when they're beginning to use Tailwind and stuff, that we have a lot of unnecessary styles, because if I want to style each of my allies, I have to do the same styling over and over again. And this is where class names, custom class names come in, right? So we're gonna write our custom class name here, which is gonna be header link. This is going to be our first custom class name. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select each of my allies and just press Command D. So what I just did here is basically I just press Command D to select each of these allies, and then I actually pasted this all together at the same time, just to be quicker. And header link is not a utility class inside Tailwind. It is our custom class name which we created, so we don't have to repeat ourselves by giving the same styles. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to my global CSS, right? And how I navigate quickly is by just pressing Command P and typing the file name. This is how I navigate, and you can just navigate using the sidebar too. So I'm going to go to global CSS, and I'm actually going to see the styling I've actually given in my finished build in global CSS. So we have these base components and utilities, right? Now I'm going to access the layer, and I'm actually going to access the component layer. Okay, so we have 3 layers. We have components, utilities, and base, but I'm going to access the component layer. And what I'm going to do is the custom class name which I just typed is header link, right? I'm going to give some custom some Tailwind styles here, right? by using the add apply tag. And when you use the add apply tag, you can actually use Tailwind CSS here. If you don't want to use, you can use normal CSS too here. So if I just type color red, actually I can use normal CSS here. So you can see this works too, right? Because this is just our CSS file. But make sure this is actually linked to your app TSX, right? It's actually linked here. It should be linked at the top here. So, but I don't want to use normal CSS because of course what's the point of using Tailwind otherwise? So I'm just going to use my add apply tag, and I'm just going to give some styling here. I'm going to say cursor pointer, text of small, font of light, I'm going to say, and I'll keep changing so you all can see what's happening. Font of light, and I'm also going to say text. So I want some, so now this square brackets actually, so Tailwind has some custom palettes of their own when it comes to the coloring system inside of Tailwind, but I want to use like custom color. Let's say I want to use a custom hex value. Now how can I actually do that? And to do that in Tailwind, using Tailwind is actually really easy. All you have to do is put square brackets, and you can use this for anything, by the way, not just for colors. And you can put any custom hex value here. So I'm going to say E5, 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 which is the a whitish, creamy whitish color. So I'm going to give that color, and I'm going to apply a transition. And if I hover over this, you can see it actually applies this custom color right inside of Tailwind. This is really good about Tailwind too. So you can use any custom values if you want to. I tend not to use a lot of custom values because there's no point of using the Tailwinds. You should use as much as Tailwind utility classes, but only if needed, you know. So that's just my approach. So I'm just gonna say duration, and the duration is actually gonna be four. Now I don't have 400 milliseconds, so I can give a custom value here of 4 milliseconds like this, you know. And I can also say when I actually hover, and this is this means when I actually hover over the header link, I want my text to be changed to different color, which is going to be B3, B3, B3. I'm just going to save it. So right now, of course, the reason they're actually very light is because we don't have a proper background. So since we are in the global CSS, let's actually do that too. What I'm going to do is now I'm going to access my base layer instead of components. And this is really good convention because how I like to kind of think of it is in the base layer, all the things which come is your HTML, your body, your heading tags, your H1s, H4s, all those things. These are your base, you know, the base HTML tags, you know. Whereas in the components, I like to think of them as custom class names, you know, which you have given inside of your application, you know. And header link is like a custom class name. So this is how I like to kind of think about it. So inside of our base layer, I'm going to target my whole body actually, and this is not a class name, of course, this is just the HTML tag body, and I'm going to use the add apply tag. And you can, I mean, you can do the same exact thing in components too. This is just a convention of using the base layer for the body. This is just a good convention. And I'm actually going to say apply background. I'm going to have a custom color here of 141414. And as soon as I save that, boom, here we go, right? As soon as I save that, our whole body's background changed, and we can see this beautiful links here. Next thing I'm actually going to do is I'm going to say text of white, and I'm also going to say, so yeah, that's all I'm actually going to say, the text of white for now. And one more thing we're going to be having is a custom scroll bar. So if you guys can see a custom scroll bar, we have created this red custom scroll bar. I'm going to show you all how to actually create this custom scroll bar, you know, which is really really nice too. So we have this. Now let's actually go back to our header and continue building our header component. So let's see, the next thing we're going to have is we're going to have a right section, right? We're going to have a right, so we have a left and we have a right section. Now for our right section, we'll have some bunch of icons, right? And these icons, we're going to be using 2 icon packs actually, and we're going to be using React icons, and we are also going to be using hero icons. And if you choose any other icon library, you can just choose to use that, you know. But I'm going to make this bigger. Actually go to hero icons. This is the icons we're going to be using. So the way we install this is just go to the documentation, actually shows us Here is the npm, this is how we actually install. And the hero icons are really good because they are actually designed by Tailwind CSS makers themselves, so they're actually really nice. I love hero icons. So we can just copy the command here, go back to our application, open the terminal by pressing Command J, right? And I like to split my terminals instead of closing the previous one. I'll just paste my link here and install this. And we have installed hero icons, and since we are here, let's just install React icons too. And React icons is another really good library. And mostly React icons is used in production environments, like when you're working, like as I was working in my company, I used React icons, so used in production environments a lot. And this is how we install React icons, npm install. So again, I'm just gonna press the link here, and you can just find React icons is a mixture of different several different icon packs, you know, whereas hero icons on the other hand is a bit minimalistic. It has a less bunch of icons, not a lot of icons here. So what we are gonna do is we're gonna have a bunch of icons, right, on the right section here. So I'm gonna close my terminal now, and the first icon you're gonna have is a search icon. So I'm just gonna say search icon, right? And it's actually not auto importing, so I'm just gonna manually import this. So I'm just gonna say import search icon from, I'm just gonna say hero icons, and it's gonna be the outline one. Actually, it's gonna be a solid variant. So I'm just gonna say search icon. Let's go back, and here we see a really huge icon right now. But I'm gonna give a class name, and the reason hero icons are really good is because we can give Tailwind class names right inside of here. You know, you can actually style them using Tailwind CSS. So what I can do here, I can say I want this icon to be hidden on a smaller screen, because Netflix doesn't show the search functionality on a smaller screen until it reaches the you know, a small breakpoint, which is actually the 640 pixels. So I'm just gonna keep it hidden, and of course right now it's hidden. So let's actually keep it like this, I guess. So actually keep it like this. Okay. Now the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say 8.6 and width 6, not G, 8.6, sorry, and 8.6 and width 6. So to make the height and width consistent for the icon. And again, if you want to know what these values are, is I never memorize these values, by the way. It's not that I've memorized that 8.6 is 24. It's just how I just see the changes happening, and this is how I figure out stuff. And you can do the same, you know. This is how I pretty much work through the UI. So I have a search icon here, and the next thing I'm gonna have a p tag, right? And the p tag is just gonna say kids, you know, and I'm just gonna save this. And the p tag is gonna have a class name of hidden. Of course, this is gonna be hidden as well, but this is gonna be shown on a larger breakpoint, which is 1024. But it's gonna be hidden by default on phone. The next icon we're gonna have is a bell icon. So I'm just gonna say bell icon, and I can already see the auto import, and I've imported it from the package. And again, it's really huge. So all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna say I'm just gonna remove hidden, and I'm just gonna keep height and width of 6. The next thing we're gonna be having here is we're gonna have a so if I go to my finished build, we have this. So we have this image here, and when I click, it actually takes us to an account page, right? So we're gonna have a Next.js link component, which is again built in when you're using Next.js, right? So what I can do is I can do link, and you can see it gives me an auto import suggestion from next/link. So I'm just gonna press enter here. And what you can do is you can actually have inside of your link comments, and we are using TypeScript, right? So TypeScript prevents us from getting into errors. If we weren't using TypeScript here, it wouldn't show us this error. And because we are actually using TypeScript, it actually shows us this squiggly here. And what this means, if I hover over this, it says property href is missing. It means that href is actually a required property. It's a required attribute when you're using the link component. So we have to write href here. And if I actually do that, the error is gone. So there is no, so if any property is required, it actually gives us the error. And we're gonna be going to /account. So I'm just gonna say /account, and we don't have that page yet, but we're gonna have this /account, and we're gonna have an image source here. So if I try to go to my build, and if I actually paste this instead of this image, so, and again, what I just did is I just set cursor pointer and made it rounded, so we can see we have the image here, and this is actually a link. So if I actually click here, it's actually going to take us to the account page, which doesn't exist right now. So we have the link. Now the next thing we're going to be doing is we have the source, we have the class name, and I'm going to style the outer container, the outer div right now. And the way we're going to style this is we're going to say flex, right, item center. So we're going to say flex item center space between of 4. So as soon as I do that, you see how quick we can style our components using Tailwind. And I'm going to say text so small because there's going to be a text there as well of kids, which is not showing because we are not on a larger screen right now. So as soon as I go larger, we can see kids here. So text of small, and a font again of light. I'm going to be using font of light. And font of light is just the font weight basically. This is just the font weight of 300. So that's all I'm going to be doing. So that's it for the styling portion. I think we are quite complete with our header actually. We just need to work around some responsiveness, and the outermost header style, we actually forgot to actually do that. But the outermost styling for the header we're going to be doing is actually inside of global CSS, and if you all guessed it, it's going to be right in the base layer. And the reason we're actually going to be doing like that is again because we're going to have header in a lot of different places, right? And we don't want to be repeating our class names over and over again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a header here and just use the add apply tag again. And here we're going to give some custom CSS Tailwind styles. So first our header is going to be fixed. And what I mean by fixed is when I actually scroll. So if I go to the home page right now, and if I actually try to scroll, we can see the header is actually fixed, right? Fixed header, right? And this is how Netflix is doing, by the way. So we're going to say fixed. We're going to say center, justify content between, space between. We're going to say padding left and right of 4, py of 4, and we want to say transition all. So I want to apply a really nice transition on the header, and when we reach the large breakpoint, I want to increase the padding to 10, right? And when we increase the large breakpoint, I want to increase the padding top bottom. So py is top bottom, px is left and right padding. It's a quicker way of writing padding left and right. So as soon as I do that, we see this beautiful, just look at this, it's completely transformed right now. And as soon as I go on a smaller screen, we see the links disappearing, and if I go more smaller, we see the search icon disappearing. So this is our completely responsive header done, right? And we have this beautiful transition. And the good thing about this is actually it has a really nice transition, as if you guys can notice, right? So the padding transition is happening. This is really nice transition. So now we're actually done with our header component. Yeah, that's it. That's it, everyone. That's it. We're actually done with our header. All I actually want to do. So we're actually not done. So we're not quite done. Sorry. So remember we have this. So we have this scrollable thing. So when I actually try to scroll, the header has a background, right? The background actually changes. This is what we need to do the next part of our header. And the way we're going to be doing this is using so we have a piece of state, okay? And if you don't know what a state is in React, you can pretty much learn React hooks, and you know, it's just a hook, use state. And we're going to be using a use state and a use effect hook. And what I'm going to say is I'm going to say is scrolled, and we're also going to have set is scrolled. And here we're going to say use state, which is a React hook, and I can auto import it, right? Use state from React. And so this is actually a React hook, right? We're going to be using, and by default it's going to be a Boolean value, so I'm just going to say false. By default it's just going to be false. And now we're going to be using a use effect inside of React, and what a use effect is going to allow us to do is basically what a use effect does is, if you're familiar with class components, when actually the component mounts, right? So when the component mounts, and what it means actually comes when the UI of the component mounts, right? When you see the UI, right? So that's called mounting, when the component actually mounts, right? So on the mount, it's actually we're gonna have a function called handle scroll, and then we're gonna have a cleanup function as well. right? And what this is going to do is we're going to have this handle scroll, and we have something called, so we're going to check, so we have something called window, right? Inside of React we always have a window, and what we window has these bunch of properties, but the one we are interested in is actually the scroll Y property. And window means this whole window, basically. This is what the window means. This is the whole our window, right? And what we are checking here is we are saying if our window.scrollY is actually greater than 0, which means actually someone tries to scroll, right? That's what this means. I want my set scroll to be true, right? We want the set scroll to be true, and if it's not, we want it to be false, right? So if it's actually greater than 0, we want it to be true. If it's not, we actually want it to be false, right? The next thing we want to do here is outside this function, right? We have to clean up this function. So first thing we're going to say is we're going to have add an event listener, right? And this is again JavaScript, right? This is very basic JavaScript. And if again you're struggling with this window.add event listener and stuff like that, I'd suggest just Google through it. Just Google add event listener, and you're gonna see a bunch of stuff about it. And that way is the best way to actually and pause the video here, Google through this, and just learn this stuff, and then come back to the video. That way you're gonna understand about this. So window.add event listener. And this add event listener basically means that this window object which we have is actually going to listen. It can listen for a bunch of events, right? And which event do we want to listen to? We want to actually listen to a scroll event, right? And this is actually in JavaScript, right? And we want to send in the function called handle scroll, right? So we want to listen to the scroll event, and we want to actually run this function, right? And then we're going to check for the scroll Y number if it's actually greater than 0. And if it is greater than 0, then of course it's going to set its scroll to true. And next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually clean up this function. So I'm just going to say return window.remove, because now remember it's very important to clean up this function. So we're going to do scroll and handle scroll. So this means that this use effect is only going to run, and because we have an empty dependency here, so if I don't do this, it's always going to run every time the page renders, right? But we don't want to do that. We only want this to run based on the headers mounting, right? When the header is actually mounting. So that's when we want to actually run this. But this is actually only going to run on a single mount. So that's really important. So now we have the handle scroll, and we are saying handle scroll set scroll is true if the scroll Y is true. Now actually let's test this out, right? And the way we can test this out is by changing the styling here, and because we have a piece of state, right? So we can actually test it here. And in the header, I'm just going to say class name, and I'm going to actually open my curly braces so I can use a JavaScript, and this is called template string. I'm pressing backticks here, so I can use JavaScript with the CSS together. And I'm actually going to open my dollar braces like this, and I can use JavaScript right now. I'm going to say if is scroll is true, and I'm going to use and an operator, and I'm just going to change my background to 141414 if this is true, right? And what this actually means that if this is true, and right now because the whole background is actually kind of the same, we are not seeing much of a difference, but of course we're going to have this image, right? So as soon as we have this is actually going to work. But let's actually change this to something else. Let's maybe change this to instead of 14, let's change it to red 500, so we can actually see the difference. So if I actually try, because right now we don't have anything, and we are actually not scrolling, so the window scroll Y is always gonna be 0, right? But when you have more content, more information, you're going to see that this will actually work. And when we scroll, this header's color is going to change based on this condition here. So let's turn it back to 1414, and let's keep building the header. Of course we don't see it right now, but when we have more stuff, more content, we are definitely going to see this working. So this is our headers implementation, dynamic stuff and some UI. So let's get back to our index, our home page, and let's move on. Let's move on to the next thing. Now before actually moving on towards our next component, let's actually give some styling here for the outermost div here. So this is going to be relative. Remember, we give position fixed for the header, so we need to say from what it's actually relative to. So we're going to give relative, position relative for the outer container. We're also going to say height of screen. And actually if I try to give a more height, we might be able to see the header actually. So if I actually change the header's color now, we might be able to see that this actually works. So here we go. Yeah. So you can see as soon as I scroll, the header's color changes, right? So this means our functionality is correct and this is working. And as soon as I go back to the top, again the scroll y becomes 0. So this condition becomes false, and is scroll, it actually sets it back to false. So this is what basically is happening in our header, and you can see it's actually working. So now let's actually turn it back to that and go to our home page. And instead of 140, so we're not gonna be having 140. Instead, we're gonna be having height of screen, which is 100 view height, which means take the full viewport height. And it does not matter which device you're using. If you're on a desktop, it means it's gonna take the desktop's viewport height. If you're on a phone, it's gonna take the phone's viewport height. You know, so it's gonna be really nice. So we have a height of screen, and now we're gonna be having a background gradient to bottom actually. Okay, and this is how you use gradients in Tailwind. So we're gonna have a linear gradient towards the bottom. Okay, and the linear gradient is gonna be from gray, and this is actually really nice because this is what Netflix has it, by the way. It's gonna be from gray 900 and /10. And what I basically just did here is that I just said I want the gradient from, right? We have two different colors when you have a linear gradient to bottom, right? So I have to say from to, right? So I have to say two different colors. So I'm saying from gray 900, and this actually basically means this is just the alpha value. So when we use RGBA values, we have the last one, which is for the alpha value. I'm just saying 10, which means 0.1 alpha value. And now I'm going to change the 2.1 to a custom value of 0.10, and it's going to be 5.1.1. And on a larger screen, a larger breakpoint, I'm actually going to have a height of 140 view height. And as soon as I actually save it, look at this. Look at this. We have this changed. And right now we can see the header's background is actually applying as soon as I go. And because I'm on a bigger screen, right? So what I said is on a larger screen, I want this to be 140 view heights. And there's actually a very good reason why we want to do that, right? And as soon as we go smaller screen, it's actually 100 view heights again. File called banner.tsx. So right now what we're going to be working on is actually, I'm just going to say banner, and actually let's quickly auto import this from our components file. So we have our banner, and it's actually on the top right. The reason it's actually on the top left is because our header is actually fixed, so it does not know where to actually start because our header is fixed. Remember, whenever you do position absolute or fixed, this does not take into account the height of the header basically. Right now we're going to be working on this beautiful banner. So this is actually too bright. Let me refresh. Maybe let's get another movie. Yeah, so we're going to be working on this banner component with this, with this banner, and it's going to be dynamic again. We're going to be fetching a single movie, a random movie, and it's going to be from the Netflix originals one, that's where it's going to be. And you can, I'll show you all you can do it from anywhere, however you want to. But this is what we're going to be working on, this whole banner component basically. So let's keep working. Make it half and half, maybe like this. So what we can do is we can actually say, let's make it like this. I think this is much better. Let's actually go to banner. And I'm actually going to open my banner component now, because we are actually done with our header. So our banner.tsx. So inside of our banner, there's a bunch of stuff we're going to be having. So we're going to have a div here inside of our banner, right? And this div is actually going to have the image, and this is going to be the image, and this is going to be a Next.js image component, and this image is going to be the banner image basically. It's going to be the banner image, and again, this is erroring out right now. It's saying it's not working right now. But before we actually do this, I think we should maybe implement the REST API and the server-side rendering, so we can actually get all of our results, from the API, and we can actually render the dynamic results instead of hard coding different images. So I think we should actually do that before we actually try to build the whole banner. And we can actually do that. So the way we can do that is we have to go to TMDB. So I want you all to go to TMDB API, click on the getting started part here, right? Actually, not here, actually to this official website, the moviedb.org. This is the link we want to go to. And the next thing we want to do is we want to create an account. If you're new to this, this API basically gives you, this is a REST API. It's a database for different bunch of movies. And the cool thing about this API is it actually updates regularly. So, and we're going to be using server-side rendering, which means our website is going to be staying updated 24/7. So with the new regular latest movies, you know, so it stays updated. So it's a really nice API actually. So create an account if you don't have an account. Then after creating an account, just go to settings and click on API, and all you have to do is get this key here, and you have to hide this key. We cannot show this key to anyone. So we can actually get this key, API version 3 auth, right? This is the key we want. And the next thing we want to do is actually go back to our app now. And because we have a secret key, right? So we want to hide this key. And the way we do this inside of Next.js is we create a file called .env.local, right? .env.local, and this is actually going to be the API key. So it's going to be an API key, but this key is actually going to be exposed to the client. And whenever you have any keys which are exposed to the client, we always have to add something called next public in the beginning. And this is super important. If you don't add this next public, it's not going to work. Your API key is only going to work in the server-side rendering, which means it's the backend, right? But it's not going to work in the client, which means if you have this key inside of any use effects or anything, it's not going to work without the next public, this prefix. So this is very important. We need the next public. So I'm just going to say next public API key, going to save this. And because I actually changed my env.local, I'll have to restart my server as well. So I'm just going to cut the server, Control-C, and I'm going to run the server again, right? And now I'll be able to use my API key. So the next thing I want to basically do is we want to have a function inside of our home page, because we're going to be doing a server-side render and fetching all these collections, all these different movies from different collections, you know, and we're going to be server-side rendering them. So there's no sort of loading. We get literally no loading. There's going to be zero loading. So the user experience is going to be really nice. So the way we can actually do this, the first thing I want to do is we want to have a request. So in the finished build, I actually have a file called, so if I go to my finished build, let's just close this. This is my finished build. So if we go here, we have a file called a request, and I think it's inside of utils. So inside of our utils folder, which is, and in this build, I'm also teaching everyone you all to use a folder structure, a nice folder structure. So there's a really good folder structure as well. So we have a folder called utils, okay? And what utils can contain stuff like request, and what request is basically is going to be a file with different bunch of requests here, so we don't have to write this over and over again. So we're just going to use fetch, trending, Netflix original, top rated, action, comedy, horror, romance, and documentaries, and we're just going to export this a default, you know, so we don't have to actually hard code this over and over again. So this is why we have this beautiful file. I want you all to copy this file, okay, and create a new file inside of request directory. And request can have all these different bunch of files, and it's going to be .ts, because ts is for TypeScript, right? And the difference, you all might be wondering, difference between tsx and why do you use tsx and ts, right? The reason we are using ts and tsx, you can use tsx too, but the tsx means we're going to be returning some JSX, right? And what JSX means is returning some HTML. We're going to be returning some. So whenever that is the case, whenever we are returning something, we always want to use TSX files as opposed to TS files. But here I'm not going to be returning anything, so I'm just using a normal TS file. So that's actually the reason I'm actually just using TS. And where did I actually get all these URLs? Is they're actually there on the TMDB documentation, but I made it easier for everyone, for all of you, so you can just copy paste this, you know. But you can look in their documentation. If you go type TMDB docs, TMDB docs, you will see the API overview, not here actually. It should be somewhere here. Yeah, so this is the documentation. It's gonna load this documentation, and this is where you can find all the information. If I go to movies, you can see all the get requests, the post requests, the delete request, you know, the CRUD functionality. So you can try this out. You know, you can click on try out. This is the URL they actually give you. So this is where I actually got all these URLs from, you know. So let's continue building this. So we have our request, and I have the API key equals to my next public API key and a base URL. This is the base URL, so we have a base URL as well. So now the next thing I'm going to be doing is we're going to be writing a server-side, doing a server-side render here. And the way you do server-side render inside of Next.js, you have a function at the bottom or at the top, wherever you want to be. You can have it at the top here as well. So you have a function called export, and it's going to be const, and we're going to say get server-side props, server-side props. And of course it's going to be an asynchronous function, so I'm just going to say async, and I'm just going to type it like this. So this is going to be an asynchronous server side, and the way it works in Next.js is whenever the name actually understands based on the name. So because I said server side props, the Next.js is going to understand that we're going to do a server side render here. And the naming is important because we so much time into this, because I'm going to explain. This is really easy. I'll explain, I'll make it easier for everyone. So I'll just go to my home page, not to my login. So we'll just go to my home page, and what we can do is I'll get all of these requests actually. And let's go back now. Let's make it side by side again. And what I'm actually doing here, and we have to import, remember we have requests and we have to actually import this. So I'm just going to press command space, control space, and just auto import this. So we have a request. Now what I actually just did here, right? Now if any one of you watched my watched the Disney clone, the Disney build video, you might remember this, and I told that time that I'm gonna do some kind of similar build because pattern recognition is really important, right? And that's what we are doing. We are doing the same thing right now. We are doing pattern recognition basically. We're doing the same exact thing, so we learn you know, by doing the same stuff over and over again. So what we are doing here is we have a promise.all, and the reason I'm using, and we have a bunch of, we have this array with different, you know, different Netflix originals trending now, all these different variables. And the reason I'm using a promise.all instead of doing it separately is because when you have different await requests, using promise.all, you are just using one await. But if I was doing this as separately, I'd have to use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different awaits, 8 different times, which is not a good way of doing stuff, right? You don't want to use so many awaits. So I'm just using one await, and I'm just using promise.all to actually complete the whole operation, right? So it represents the completion of an asynchronous operation. And I'm saying .all, right? Which means it actually resolves all of these fetch requests. So I'm resolving all these fetch requests together. And even if you want to optimize this further even, what you can do is, I didn't do this because I wanted to keep it beginner friendly, but what you can do this is have this itself in a separate file of its own, and then, you know, just maybe like a map through this or something. So that's like a more optimized version of this. But the next thing we're going to do is we're going to have a return, and in Next.js, in server-side rendering and stuff like this, what you have to do is you have to return something called props. And when you return something called props, you can actually access it on top of the application here. So we're going to be returning props, okay? And what we're going to be returning is, again, I'm just going to quickly get them. We're going to be returning these props here. And the reason I'm actually doing .results is because these results, right? These results are going to be having two things. They're going to be having an ID, and they're going to be having something called results, right? They're going to be having like two different objects inside of this. So this Netflix origin is one object. This is going to contain .results, and it's going to contain ID. So I'm actually accessing the results because we are interested in the movies, right? So we are actually accessing the .results part. And now I'm just going to save it. And the way to test this is actually, let's just right. So normally before, you have seen me doing this and there wasn't any error. We didn't used to get any errors. You could just console log this and it didn't used to give. But right now if I hover, it says property Netflix originals does not actually exist on type children, right? So it actually does not exist, it's telling us. And first of all, we're going to be using our own type, so we don't need the next page, which is again a type from Next.js, so we can just remove that. So that's what I'm actually telling us. It has implicitly has any type. Right now the type error is changed to implicitly has any type. So when you're using TypeScript, you have to provide types for these things, right? And the way you actually do this is actually very simple. TypeScript, once you try to understand, and it's really powerful. And the reason you might be asking, for any of the beginners, you might be asking, why do we have to do this, right? What advantages, what benefits does it actually give us? The benefit of using TypeScript actually gives us really good IntelliSense, and it's really good for production environments, because think about it, when you're working in big applications, right? You want to need the IntelliSense, because you might be working on different stuff all the time, right? So you need the IntelliSense. So first, it actually gives you IntelliSense. It prevents you from getting into different sort of errors. So if you're using a string in place of instead of a number, and you have to use a number, and if you're not using TypeScript, you might not even know about that, right? But using TypeScript actually prevents that. Actually prevents you from using a number instead of a string if you had to use a number, So that's really that's literally the point of using TypeScript, Have this type of TypeScript, right? The Netflix originals, to actually need that, right? All we have to do is actually go into a file called we have to create a file. We have to create a file, so it's not there by default. So we have to create this file called typings.definitions.type. So it's a TypeScript definition file. So I'm just gonna make this bigger, and I've already created that. So what I'm gonna do is actually go back here, and this is the file. So this is called typescript.d.ts. So let's just create this file first. And this is the convention, like you can just name it anything, but this means this is a TypeScript definition file. So I'm just gonna say typings.d.ts, and all I'm gonna do is actually copy this. I have a bunch of types here, and we can just go back to being like that. And now what I'm doing here is I like to use interfaces. So in TypeScript, the way you actually have types for something is you can either use types or you can either use interfaces. If you want to use types, all you have to do is type, and instead of like this, you just have to say equals to here. So since it's kind of like a type, right? So this is what a type is basically. And I like to use interfaces because interfaces, they can be extended and stuff, So if you do something like interface, you can actually extend this to another interface basically. So that's the advantage of using interfaces over types. But that's like just my personal preference, right? You can use types if you want. And now I have three different types. So one type I have it for genre, another one for movie. So for movie we're gonna have, and how I actually got to know about this type is actually by just console logging, right? So what I did is I just console logged so if I just do it right now, Netflix originals, and let's actually go back to our application. We're seeing undefined, right? Let's just refresh. And as soon as I refresh, boom, we get 20 different results, right? We get 20 movies, right? And the way I actually found the types for this, and this is actually server-side rendered, by the way. So we are actually connected to our API, right? The way I actually found is by just console logging these movies. So these are my types, and then I actually added them to the types here and just appropriately did that, and the media type and the release date are some optional types. So if there's any type that is optional, you can just put a question mark here, and then so it has a type, and it can be of either of these values. So it can be either of bloopers, featurette, behind the scenes, clip, trailer, or teaser. It can be anything, and there's a reason why we have a type of element. So I'm just gonna quickly save this, and let's go back to our application now. Let's make it like this again, and let's actually apply the type here. So now the type, the way I'm gonna be applying types here is I'm just gonna say props, right? And what are props is we're gonna create interface for this component or for this page itself, and we're gonna say interface props, right? And inside of our interface props here, we're gonna say Netflix originals. So I'm just gonna copy this, and Netflix originals, right, is gonna be of type movie, right, which we have already created. So we can auto import from our type definitions file, as you can see, and it's gonna be an array of different movie types, right? Different movie types. So I'm just gonna say array, and this is one way of doing, or you can just say like this. So this is another way of doing types here. But since it's gonna be an array of different movies, So Netflix originals is going to be an array of different movies, right? So this is how we actually do this, and it's not just going to be Netflix originals, it's going to be all of these. So what we can do here is I can just go here, since I've already done this, and again just go to pages, the home page, and what we can do is actually get all these different types here. And first we can get the interface for these different types, so we can just copy this, and you can see I can just copy this, and I don't have product yet, but we're going to have a product type as well. And now we can just copy these types here, and here we go. So we have different bunch of types now, right? Now we can send these different results we got, right? We have types for them. You have, now it's not erroring out anymore. So now it's not erroring out, and the good thing about TypeScript is it actually gives us really good IntelliSense. So if I actually remove something, and if I go bottom, you can see I actually get the IntelliSense. So I remove these three things, I will actually see, so I press Command space, I'll actually see these three, right? Because it's actually there in my types now, which is really, really nice, the thing I love about TypeScript. Because and types is the props, and this can be anything, right? You can name this anything, but usually the convention is to name just props, and we have top rated, and then we have trending now. So this is the really good thing. And if I have something like which is not present, it's gonna actually give me an error because it's not there in my type props. So it's gonna give me an error. So this is why TypeScript is really, it's like it makes your code really robust, and really you can think of it as error proof, so it's really nice. So we have our Netflix originals, we're getting back the results, we know that. So let's actually display these results on our home page now, right? Because you want it to display like this beautiful banner, right? So let's work on this banner first. Now for the banner, what we want to actually do is we want to send in this Netflix originals as it is, as Netflix originals, because we cannot do the server-side render in our component. We can only do the server-side render on pages, so we'll have to send this to our banner component. And the way we access is, again, just say Netflix originals here, and again we're just going to do the same pattern. We're just going to say props, and we have to do this, guys, like this this is something you have to when you're using TypeScript, you have to learn this, and you have to get into the habit of doing this. And again, I'm just going to say movie, and again auto import from our typings, and just say it like this. So that's all we have to do for our banner. And now we can see, now a good thing about TypeScript is that if I actually remove this now, because I'm expecting something, right? So it's actually going to say, is Netflix originals actually missing? So I need to, because I'm actually expecting this type, right? And if I actually make a question mark here, then it's not going to give me an error, because that means it's an optional. But if it's not an option, it means I'm expecting this thing. So I need to send in this thing here, which is what, this is the reason why TypeScript is, I mean, if you're using it for the first time, you might get an idea now that why is it really nice using TypeScript. So we are sending the Netflix originals to our banner. Now I can go inside my banner, and let's actually build our beautiful banner component now. And we'll have our Netflix originals. So what we can do is just uncomment this image, and again, this is going to give us an error saying source is missing. Again, remember what I told you when we are using the link component. This is again the image component from Next.js, and it's saying the source is a compulsory attribute, so we cannot miss that attribute, right? Now before actually even doing that, what we want to do is we actually want to get a random movie every time we refresh a page. Now how do you do that? Because think about it, it's only going to give us a random movie when you refresh a page, right? Every time you refresh a page, it's going to give us a random different movie. Right now it gives me Sonic. If I refresh again, it's actually going to give me Ice Age or something like that. So it actually gives you a random movie. Now how do you actually do that, right? Is by using a use effect again, and by going through the whole array, and by just getting a random movie and setting it to a piece of state. So the way I actually did this is we have a piece of state, right? And it's going to be called movie, right? And we're going to say set movie, okay? And we're going to say use state. Again, we're going to auto import from React, and use state is going to be, now this is where again we're going to be using TypeScript. Now to provide a type to our use state, because again the movie is going to be type of movie, or it can be null. So this means that by default it can be null as well, right? So by default it will be actually null, right? And then we're going to set it to a movie type, right? And now we're going to have a use effect based on this. So I'm just going to say use effect, and let's auto import from React, right? And again, this is how you write an use effect. You have an empty dependency, right? Now inside of my use effect, we're just going to say set movie, right? Okay, and then we're going to use Netflix originals. And now the good thing about TypeScript is it already knows that this is an array, right? So it actually gives us mapping function and all these functions because it already knows, because we actually told it that this is a type of different types of movies, right? And it's an array of movie type, right? So it actually already knows now. So what we can do here is we can say math, and I'm going to write a function to generate a random index here, right? Because we're going to access a random movie. So we're going to generate a random index, a random number from the index. So we're just going to say math.floor, and we're just going to say math.random, okay? And this is a basic level basic JavaScript. This is and even in Java or any other language you might have learned this. This is how we generate a random number, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to multiply it to the Netflix originals dot length. This is what we're going to be doing, right? And what this is going to do is actually going to generate a random index, right? And this is going to be dependent on Netflix originals. So every time the Netflix originals actually changes the array, this use effect is going to run, and it's going to set a different movie, right? Every time the Netflix original is going to change. Every time this is going to run, and it's going to set a different number, it's going to generate a new movie, basically. So that's what we are actually trying to do here. Now, what we can do is we can actually console log our movie, and let's actually see if we're getting back anything. So I make this bigger, I go, and I'm already getting an object. Now if I refresh, I'm getting this object. The movie name is the Atom Project. Now if I refresh again, it should be a different one, and it's different. So this is working, right? So we're getting different movie every single time when we refresh, right? All we have to do now is display this in a beautiful banner UI, right? That's all we have to do now. So now I'm just gonna copy this and uncomment this. And now we'll have the source, and the source again is going to be template strings, and I'm going to be using a variable here, and it's going to be called base URL. Now again, we're going to create this just in a second. Right now it's not there because TypeScript is shooting us an error. It cannot find, right? Now we're going to say movie dot backdrop path, right? And again, this automatically adds an optional chain. So when you're using TypeScript, these are the benefits you get, right? So because we already told TypeScript, right? We already told our piece of state that this piece of state is going to be a movie, or it can be null, right? It can be, because when it's generating, it can be actually null, right? So because we told it can be actually null, right? What it does is actually adds a optional chain automatically if you do this. So we don't actually have to, and if I don't actually add this, it actually tells us object is possibly null. So we know that we need to add this. This is why TypeScript is really, really good. Trust me, guys. Now we can say movie.backdrop path, and the next thing we can say is movie.poster path, right? Again, it's going to tell me that I have the optional change to protect it because it can be null, right? So we have to protect it. Now we have to create a base URL. And this is where, again, I'm going to teach something about the folder structure. Again, this base URL, the reason we are using this is because TMDB API actually gives us a URL to generate the images. Because if I console log right now, and if I show you all the backdrop path, so we can see the backdrop path and the poster path actually kind of looks like this. So we have two different variables. One of them is backdrop path, another one is poster path. Either of these can, so first I'm checking that if there is any backdrop path, I want to use that. If it's not present, then I want to go to the poster path. So that's like my alternative to the backdrop path. But the point is that it does not give us the beginning, right? So we cannot just access this. So I cannot just access this thing here. If I try to access, it's not going to work, right? So I cannot access this. I need the whole URL, right? So there's something called a base URL TMDB API gives us, right? And the way I made it easier for everyone. So the way we don't want to repeat this on every single component, what I did is I actually created a folder called for constants again, and inside of our constants we have something called movie.typescript. So if I create a folder called constants, right, and here we can say movie.ts, and just from this folder we can get this, export this base URL. So now we can just save this, and this is the base URL, and we don't have to repeat this in every different component or wherever we use the images from the API, right? Because you already have a folder. Now I can just auto import this from our constants/movie. I can save this. Now as soon as I actually save this, it's giving me another error. Now it's actually telling me that image with source TMDB must use width and height. Because we are using a Next.js image component, it needs us to use either image width or height, or either layout fill. In this case, we're going to use layout fill. So we're just going to say layout. And there are different types of layout. We can see there's fill, fixed, intrinsing, and raw. But we're going to be using the fill one. And whenever you use layout fill, the outer parent should be actually absolute or relative. You know, in this scenario, it's going to be absolute. We're going to say top of 0. Top of 0. We're also going to say left of 0. Left of 0. And we're going to say a negative z index value. So actually, let's not actually give the styling right now. Let's copy this, but that's not. Oh, actually, let's just keep it for now. But let's fix this error. The next error is actually telling us that the next/image host name image.tmdb.org is not configured. Now this is something you face when you're using a Next.js image component. So we have to configure our host names, and the way we do that is go to your next.config.js file, and inside of your next.config.js, if I actually open this link, it actually tells me how to fix this, right? So we need to have images and domains like that, right, inside of our module or export. So we need to have something called images domains. And what React strict mode is basically every time React uploads a newer version which has breaking changes and stuff, so just so it does not conflict, we have the strict mode turned to be true, right? That's what React strict mode is. But you can search about it in the documentation here too, you know. But for the image, what we need to do is we need to now go back and we need to see it's actually giving us the exact URL we need to configure. So it's telling us host name image.tmdb.org. So we need to replace this one, because that was an example one, and we can have as many as we want to here. We can have different host names from different domains, because it actually optimizes the image and it converts the image into a format called WebP format, right? And just because I changed the next config, you can see found the change, so we need to restart the server. So what it does, it changes it to a WebP format, which is an optimizable format for the image, and actually lazy loads the images and does a lot of cool stuff behind the back. This is why Next.js is really slick, you know. And right now it's actually showing us null, so it's actually telling us we're not actually having any image. Yeah, the reason we're not having, because we don't have the height and the width set. So that's where we need to set the parent's height and width, right? So here what we want to do is we want to say a height of 95 view height. I'm going to say 95 view height, because it's a custom value, so I'm just going to say 95 view height. And we also want to give the width, and the width I'm going to say width of screen, which is of course the 100 view widths, right? And right now we can see it's actually stretched. Now how do we actually fix this, right? We see the image, but it's actually stretching. Now how do we fix the stretching? All we have to do is there's a property called object fit, which we can use inside of in our Next.js image components, and we can use cover, contain. If I do contain, you will see that it will maintain the aspect ratio, but this is not what we want. We need to take the full height, right? So to make sure it does that, we're gonna say cover. As soon as I say cover, boom, there you go. Right now it's not stretching and it's working really nicely, right? And if I try to refresh this, it's gonna show me a different image, and you can see every time the movie actually changes, right? Which is really, really nice. And now one more thing we want to actually make sure we do is we want to give a negative z index, because this image is actually going to be behind our text. So we need to make sure it's actually having a negative z index. Next thing, we're going to have a h1, and the h1 is again going to contain the movie.title, right? And it's going to have, so it can be either movie.title or it can be either movie.name. Again, there are some different values that the API actually gives us. So if either of them is not present, we just choose the other one, right? And we can see we have the title on top here. And the next thing we're going to have is a p tag, and the p tag is going to contain movie. So it's going to contain movie.overview. right? And now, of course, the movie overview. So we get that. Let's actually quickly style them. So for the title, we're gonna say text of 2XL. Again, make it a bit bigger, right? But that's on smaller screen sizes. On a bigger screen size, we're gonna say a large, and we're gonna say text of 7XL, right? So make it actually really big on a larger screen size. But right now we are on a smaller one, so we cannot see any changes. But as soon as I go large, you can see text actually becomes bigger, right? So text 7XL, and we're also gonna say so on MD. So we're also gonna change the text, the headings font size on a medium screen size. We're gonna say it's gonna be 4XL. So if I go medium and if I go large, it's gonna be more bigger. So we can actually quickly do these changes just using Tailwind, and you can see like how improved it increases your speed when working with CSS, right? So this is really nice. I want to do font of bold, so actually bold font, and that's pretty much it for a heading tag. Now let's style our P tag. For the paragraph tag, you want to say max width of extra small. So we want to give it a max width so it doesn't go out that max width. And text of extra small as well on a smaller screen. So I'm just going to say text of extra small on a smaller screen, and we're also going to say text shadow. Now this is a custom shadow we're going to be creating later on after we finish this styling. But for now, just remember we're going to be creating a custom text shadow, and I'm going to be showing how you can do that inside of Tailwind. So on a medium breakpoint, I'm going to increase the max width to large. So I'm going to say large. On the medium breakpoint, I'm also going to say text of large, and we're also going to do on the large breakpoint, we're going to increase the max width to more. We're going to say max width to 2XL, which is actually 672 pixels. And now on the large breakpoint, we also want to increase the font size to 2XL, right? Now, if we go bigger, you can see it really looks really nice. Now the reason it's actually on top of the header because the header is fixed, remember, and it does not take into account the height. So we need to change the UI to adapt that, right? And the way we'll actually do that is I'll go to the outermost container, and we can actually style this now. So we can say flex, display flex, right? We're going to say flex column because I want it to be in a column direction. We're going to say space Y, so some spacing between, and again space Y just works like space X, but it's vertical spacing between the children. So we're going to say space Y of 2, and we're going to say padding top bottom of 16. As soon as I do that, already see it's gone now. And on a medium breakpoint, we want to say space Y of 4, so I'm going to increase the spacing. On a larger breakpoint, we're going to say a height of 65 view heights. So I'm going to give a height of 65 view heights on a larger breakpoint. And on a larger breakpoint, we're going to say justify end. Okay. And also on a larger breakpoint, we want to say padding bottom of 12. So give some more padding on the bottom side. Now if I make this bigger, you will see that actually comes into the center, right? Because what we're actually doing is we are saying justify end. So if I actually remove justify end, it will be on the top, right? But justify end, what it's gonna do is gonna make it on the bottom of its height, right? And the height is actually 65 view height. So now we can see it's already really responsive, right? It's really, really nice. But let's continue building this. Let's continue. So we have the outermost styling. Now we have the styling for this. There we have complete. So we have completed our description, our heading. Let's move on to the bottom div here. Now this div here on the bottom is going to have some buttons, right, inside of it. So we're going to have button, and what I'm going to do is multiply by 2 because you're going to be having 2 buttons. So first one is going to say play, and the second button is actually going to say more info, just like how Netflix does, right? So play and more info, right? So the div containing the buttons, first let's actually style the buttons so we can actually see the buttons. Now again, for the buttons, we're gonna have a custom class name because we don't want to repeat our styling, right? So we're just gonna say class name, and the class name is gonna be banner button. I'm gonna paste the same one here, and this is our custom class. And this can be any name, right? Any name you want to have, but we're gonna have banner button, right? So let's go to global CSS, and inside of our component layer, let's actually have banner button and apply some styling here, right? And let me just quickly open my styles on my other screen so I can actually see what styles I have applied for the button. So for the button, we have set display flex, right? And we are going to say item center. We are also going to say give a gap x of 2, and the reason we are saying gap x of 2 is because we are going to have icons inside of our buttons. So if you actually go back, let's actually add the icons right now. So for the play button, you're going to have an icon from React Icons package, which is going to be FA play. It's going to be just FA play like this. And we can just manually import this because it's not giving us a suggestion for auto import. So I can just say play from React Icons, and it's from the FA package. So we just say /FA, which is the Font Awesome package, by the way. So the Font Awesome package. So this is a play icon, and I'm going to style this. So let's actually see if we get the icon. So we do get the icon. You can see the icon along with play. And the reason it's side by side is because in global CSS, we actually set flex, item center, and a spacing, right? But we still didn't complete that. But let's just give some styling for the icon first. Let's say height of 4, width of 4, and a text of black, not too black, text of black. This is going to make sure the icon is actually black. Right, and on medium breakpoint, you want to say height of 7, and on medium breakpoint, you want to say the width of 7. So, and right now it's black right now, as you can see. Let's go back to our global CSS and let's finish the styling. So now for the banner button, we're going to say gap x of 2. We're also going to say it's going to be rounded, right? It's going to be rounded, and we're going to say padding left and right of 5, okay? And we're going to say padding top bottom of 1.5, and again, this is for mobile first. Right, and we're going to change this as we go on bigger screens. I'm going to say text of small, font of semi-bold. So font is a little bit, more drastic. Transition, we're going to be applying, and the transition. And we're also going to say on hover, we want the opacity to change to 75, right? Because we're going to change the opacity, and you hover over this. We can see the opacity is changing right now. And we're getting there, we're getting there. And on a medium breakpoint, we want the padding top and bottom to be 2.5, and on the medium breakpoint, we also want the padding left and right to be 8. We also want on the medium breakpoint, the text to be XL. So text to be XL. So right now, if we go bigger screen size, here we go. We actually see text is getting bigger, right? And it's working really nicely. So this is the style for our banner button. Right now we don't have the backgrounds, right? The reason we don't have the backgrounds for both our buttons, the backgrounds are actually going to be different. So if we actually give a background here, it'll make the background for both the buttons actually same. If I say background red 500, it'll make for both the buttons, but since it's going to be different for both of them, what we're going to be doing is we're actually going to be changing the background separately in the buttons itself. So we can go to our banner, and in our buttons like this, what we can do here is for our first button, which is the play one, we can say background of white because we have a black icon, remember? And we can say text of black. So as soon as I do that, immediately you can see it actually changed, right? Now for our button on the bottom here, we can say background gray, has a gray background. And again, this is a custom gray color. This is not the color from Tailwind. This is the custom default gray color. And as soon as I do that, here we go, you can see the color changing. And now we're also going to have, so for the more info button, we're going to have an icon here, and this icon is going to be information, and it's going to be from hero icons. So we're going to have information circle icon, and we're going to just style this icon. We're going to say height of 5 or width of 5, right? But on a smaller screen, on a bigger screen, we're going to say height of 8 and a width of 8. So this is going to say a width of 8. As soon as I do that, boom, it already looks so much better now, right? And the buttons are actually not side by side, so we need to style their container, which is the div here. So we need to style this div here. We need to say flex, and we need to say space x of 3 between the buttons. And as soon as I do that, boom, we're actually done with our buttons now. So we have created the beautiful banner UI, and right now the banner UI is too close. It's sticking to the left side, and we need some padding, right, to prevent it from sticking to the left, right? So we just want to do that. but right now it's responsive and it's actually working, our UI, and it's actually dynamic, by the way. So if I refresh, it changes the movie and it's actually dynamic, responsive, everything is done. And the last thing we needed to add is the custom shadow, which we are talking about in Tailwind. Now to actually add custom text shadow in Tailwind, the way I actually found this is by just going to the Tailwind website. You can just type text shadow, and actually not text shadow. So Tailwind does not have any text shadow inside of the utility class inside yet right now. So what I did is I just said text shadow Tailwind, and I found a package, a really nice package. It's called text shadow npm. And if we install this package, and we're going to install this as a dev dependency, so I'm just going to copy this command here, you know, go back and just paste this on our second terminal to install this package. And once we actually install this package, what we need to do is we need to import this plugin inside of our plugin area in Tailwind configurations. If we go to the Tailwind configuration, we have this plugin, and this can be an array of different plugins. Now since this is a plugin, it's called Tailwind CSS Text Shadow. We're going to actually install this, and then we can easily use these utility classes. So what happens is when you install this plugin, actually give us these utility classes for text shadow, and we can actually use these text shadows then, which is really nice, right? So what I can do now is I can go back to the website, our website here, right? Since we have installed this, let's refresh, you know, and we see the movie. Now where we wanted to actually apply this, or it was actually in our paragraph. It was right here. So we can see right now we're gonna get our text shadow. So we get these text shadows now, and the one which we wanted to apply was the medium one. So if we apply this, our text is gonna have a shadow, a really slight medium shadow now. It's gonna again improve the UI, right? So that's all we had to do. So we have a text shadow now. We have our banner UI complete. Let's just give some padding. So let's go back to our index page now, right? And let's see. So in our main, so we need to actually style our main, right? Our main is going to contain the banner, and it's going to contain the section with a different bunch of collections, you know, different Netflix collections. So what we're going to do for the main is let's give some styling. We're going to say first make it relative, okay, and we're going to say padding left of 4. Immediately it looks better now. Padding bottom of 24, okay, and a larger screen size. We want the space Y to be 24 because we want spacing between the banner and the section, right? So that's what the space Y means. And on a larger breakpoint, we also want the padding to be more. So padding left of 16. So I'll make this bigger. We have beautiful padding now, and there we go. Really nice. The header is background changing. So we have successfully done our two components, the header and the banner, and they're dynamic. They're completely beautiful, right? And you can see they're responsive. Okay, now let's get back to our home page. So we are actually on the home page, right? Now what we want to finish is we want to finish for today all the different collections and the modal functionality. So when we click, you know, the beautiful modal actually opens up, and we can actually play that trailer stuff and all that good stuff. Or we can actually implement the modal tomorrow along with the authentication and stuff, and we can just finish all the rows for today. I think it's enough for today's build, and we can work on the modal and the authentication stuff tomorrow. So let's see. Let's start working on the rows, on our row component. So first thing I want to do is before starting this, actually let's not have this class name. So yeah, let's work. So let's create a row component. So I'm going to create a new file here, and we're just gonna say row.tsx again, and rfce, right? And let's just save this file, and let's auto import this. Save our header. So now these are going to be different rows, right? So I'm just going to quickly auto import my row from component/row, and let's have a different bunch of rows. So as soon as I save it, we can see we have 4 rows right now, right? Which is really nice. Now let's get into our row, but now before we actually get into our row, what stuff is the row going to contain? So remember, we actually imported all of these different variables, like different movies, right? Comedy, different genre of movies, right? Horror, romance, and trending and stuff. So what we can do is we can actually, for each and every single row, we can send these different results of movies, right? So what we can actually do is, first we're going to actually send the title, and I've already done this, so I'm just going to quickly go to my index page, and we can quickly get the rows from our index page. So I'm quickly actually get these rows, and let's go back to our website. So let's get these rows, and we have two props, so let's remove the list. We don't have the list for now. So we have actually two props here, right? The title and the movies, right? So what we're actually doing, and we can see TypeScript is giving us an error. It's saying title string movies is not assignable to type intrinsic attributes. The reason why is because we don't have types here, right? So what we have to do is we have to say title and movies, and we need to create a props here, and we need to create an interface for our component so TypeScript doesn't give us any errors. So all we have to do is title, which is going to be a string, right? So I'm just going to say string, and our movies is just going to be a type of movie which we have already created, remember? So it's right there in our types here. So all we have to do is, and it's going to be a string, so we're going to say string. And now if I go back, our errors are gone, right? So this is why TypeScript, again and again, I'm actually stressing this, but this is really, it really helps, you know. TypeScript is really nice, and it's really easy. Like you can see, in a matter of seconds, we just create interfaces once you get used to it, you know. So we have our row components, right, and we're sending different titles and different movies. And what is MyList? This is going to be a component. This is going to be a MyList component here. And I don't know if I actually showed this in the beginning, but what we're going to be doing is, this is our finished app, right? So you can see we have our MyList, and this is only going to be rendered. So if I actually click this, and if I actually remove this movie, you know, from our MyList, and if I actually remove this one too, what happens is actually gone right now. So this is only going to be shown if the length is greater than 0, right? If it has any movie. So if I actually have this one, if I actually add this to our MyList, you can see this is right there in a MyList. So this is where the MyList is going to be. Now let's keep working on these rows. So this is going to be our MyList component. So let's go inside of our, let's close our banner, and let's close our login page for now. Let's open row, and let's actually create this beautiful row component now. And each row we can see is actually going to be like this. So each row, this is the one single row, right? Each row is going to have a scrollable container, so we can actually scroll through different bunch of movies, and it's going to be really nice like this. And we can scroll through, and actually scrolls really nicely no matter which screen we are on. Actually scrolls really nicely, as we can see. So let's actually create this now. So now we are on the row, and what we want to do is, first thing, we want to have our title, right? Because we have a title, so we are getting the title as a prop, and we can just say as soon as I do that, we can see our titles are already changed, right? Then we have a div, and this div is actually going to contain some icons, and it's actually going to contain, and remember, those icons are going to be the left and right icons. When I actually hover over the container itself, the left and right icons, so it's going to contain these icons and the results, right? So that's what's going to happen. So we're going to say chevron, and it's going to be a chevron left icon, and it's going to be an outline variant instead of a solid one. So by mistake, I actually imported this from the, okay, and there's going to be this icon, and then there's going to be a chevron right icon, right? Again, it's going to be an outline variant, so we can just say outline. Okay, so we have these two icons, right? Of course, it's going to be huge because they're not styled right now. And again, I did not include a custom class name here, but if you want, you can include a custom class name to not repeat yourself here. You can do pretty much what we have been doing, you know, from the beginning. So I'm just going to say top 0, bottom 0, left of 2. And again, I'm saying position absolute, top 0, bottom 0, left 2, z index of 40, and margin of autos, so they're actually in the center, a height of 9, a width of 9, so they actually become smaller. Right now, a height of 9. Oh, I messed up the width here, that's why. So if I make it correctly, the height of 9, a width of 9. What else I have to do is I have to say cursor pointer, and we also want to say opacity of 0. So if I try to refresh this, and there's a different we can see there's so many different icons, because of course remember there's more than one row, right? So that's why we have different icons here. So we have opacity, and for some reasons the styles are actually not applying. No, they are applying, so we just have the right one. They are applying, and we don't have the left one because he said opacity 0. So it's actually we cannot actually see the left one. But what I can do is copy this class name, and it's going to be identical, so we can just say like this. And now it's going to be somewhere, it's actually hidden, we cannot see it because of the parent. So let's actually give some styling for the parent as well. So let's first complete this, and then let's give the styling for the parent, so we can actually see the icons, because right now it's actually hidden. So we have transition, and what we want to do is we want to say hover. So when you hover, we want to scale transition of 1 to 5, and I'm applying them at the same time because I selected both of them. And we also want to say group hover, and what group hover I'm going to explain in a second what it's going to do. And we're going to say opacity of 100. So what group hover means is actually means if we hover over the entire group, which means the parent of it, which is going to be this parent, right? So we hover over the entire container, I want the arrow to appear, right? Because if we look at our finished build, we only see the arrows when we are actually when we are actually going to hovering over the group. Otherwise we're not actually seeing any arrows, right? So that's what we are actually doing right here by saying group hover. So we have a group, we are also going to say relative, right? And we are also going to be saying on a medium screen size we want a negative margin, and again there's a very good reason why we are actually doing this. A negative margin of ML2 right now, like this. And now in between, let's just type some results or something. And we are still not seeing the arrows. So let's see why we are actually still not seeing the arrows. So we have group relative. Let's also give a height to our outermost container. So let's say a height of 40. So this is a single row, right? So what I'm doing is giving it a height of 40. So a 0.5 vertical spacing, and on medium screen size we want the vertical spacing to be spacewise too. So now each and every single row has a specific height, as we can see. We are still not seeing the arrows, so let's debug, let's fix that actually. We're still not able to see the arrows, but we actually see our different bunch of rows, and we are actually seeing the arrows right there. So they are right there when it's because we have the opacity 0, that's why. So actually remove that. We actually see the arrows now, yeah. So it was because the opacity was 0. So let's keep it that way. So we have our fixed height for each and every single row. Let's style our title as well. For our title, the width is going to be 56, so it doesn't go out of that width. We're also going to say cursor pointer. We're going to say text of small, and we're going to say font of semi-bold, not serif, semi-bold. We're also going to change the text to the creamy white color. So it's not giving me exactly white, it's going to be a slightly different sort of white. And you can see the slightly different white. And we have a transition. And we also want to say duration of 200 seconds and 200 milliseconds, sorry. And when I hover over this, the text I want it to be completely white. So you can see there's a very little subtle difference, right, in the UI when I actually hover. So if I hover right now, you can see, and right now of course we need to change the font size too, right? So we also want to say on a medium screen size we want the font size to be text of 2XL. Now if I go bigger, we can see the difference. So now all we have to do is render our different movies in these particular collections, right? So we have to actually do that. So let's work on that now. Now this is going to be in the middle here, right? We're going to have another div, and this div is going to contain a single component called a thumbnail. So I'm just going to have thumbnail here, and this div is going to have some styling. So let's actually create this instead of commenting it out. Let's actually create this component. So let's say thumbnail, and of course it's going to error out because we don't have this yet. So let's create our fourth component, which is going to be by mistake I closed it. Okay, it's going to be thumbnail.tsx. This is going to say RFCE again, close the sidebar, and this auto import this thumbnail, right? Of course, for each thumbnail, and what I mean by thumbnail is going to be this thing here. It's going to be this one single thumbnail, as we can see, right? This is one single thumbnail, and we're going to have a bunch of them because it's an array, right? So we're going to have a bunch of different thumbnails, right? Now we have these, we're going to have different thumbnails here like this, you know. Let's style the outer div. We're going to say flex. We're also going to say item center. We're going to say give spacing between them of 0.5, which is I think it's 2 pixels, I guess, if I'm correct. And overflow x of scroll, because we want the overflow to be scrollable, right? The horizontal overflow to be scrollable. So we are saying overflow scroll to be scroll. And we are also going to say a medium screen size, give a space x of 2.5, right? And also on a medium screen size, give padding of 2. And this is the reason we actually said ML2. So if we actually don't do that, and if I go to a bigger screen, we can see there's a negative margin left. So to prevent that, what I did is we just said negative margin left of 2. So because we had padding 2 on a medium screen size. So this is why we did that trick to prevent the, because in Netflix, if you see, we don't have this negative. So on Netflix, if I go to the original Netflix, and if I actually show you all, it's going to be like, we can see it's actually on the same line. It's not actually before this, right? So we need to be exactly like same like Netflix. Now let's build our thumbnail. So instead of like hard coding thumbnails like this, we're gonna, because we have our movies, right? And TypeScript actually knows it's an array because we gave a type. So we can map through them. We can map through our movies, every single movie, and we're gonna return a single, which is gonna be a single thumbnail. And since we are mapping through them, we have to provide a key, right? And the good thing about TypeScript is because we are mapping through it and we give a type, we have all this really nice IntelliSense. Now with JavaScript, you usually won't get this IntelliSense, but since we already made these types beforehand, we're actually getting this beautiful IntelliSense. We don't have to go and console log and check every time, you know. And right now we can see I have a lot of different thumbnails, right? Because of course there's going to be more than one. And we're going to send a single movie like this. And again, because we are sending something which does not exist inside of thumbnail, so we need to accept the movie as a prop, right? And we're just going to say props. And this, by the way, if you guys have any questions regarding what I'm doing this, because you might have learned props like this, right? That props like this, and the way you access props is by just saying props dot whatever the thing you're sending in props. This I'm doing is something called array destructuring. Sorry, object destructuring, not array destructuring. So that's what I'm actually doing here. So I'm just saying I'm destructuring my props, right? My props, I'm destructuring them right away into a movie because I know what I'm sending is actually a movie, right? So I'm directly destructuring them. I'm just gonna say props here, and of course we need to create an interface. Interface of props. And this is going to be a single movie, and again we created a movie type in our typings file. So we're just going to say this is going to be this is not going to be an array this time because it's going to be a single movie, right? So we're just going to say movie, and right now it's not arraying anymore. Now we can build our beautiful thumbnail component, so we can actually create that. So we go into our thumbnail, right? What we can do is we can create this thumbnail. So we're going to have this div. And we're going to have a Next.js image component. Again, the reason I'm using a Next.js image here is because, again, we want to optimize our thumbnails because, of course, on Netflix, you see all the thumbnails, right? So we want to make sure we optimize that. So we're going to be using this Next.js image component. Again, I'll quickly just actually copy this because this is just some source stuff which I already explained before. So I'll just go to thumbnail, and we're going to be using this Next.js image. Let's go back to our app now, and let's actually paste this. So Next.js image expects a source. I'm using some template strings here to combine the width of 500 here. So I'm using a different base URL. So I'm not actually using the base. If I go to constants, right now. So this one, this base URL was actually different. This base URL is actually different. So you're using a different URL this time, right? And again, I'm saying movie.backdrop path or poster path, and the class name where I'm just saying I want some rounding. Object to be covered on a medium screen size. I want it to be rounded instead of complete. And the reason we don't see it because it's layout fill, right? So we need to make sure the parent is relative or absolute. In this scenario, we're going to say relative. We're going to say height of 28. And we're also going to say a min width. So instead of width, we have to use min width in this case. I'm just going to say 180 pixels. As soon as I do that, boom, look at that. Exactly our finished application, right? This is what we're getting. I mean, we are getting there. We need to fix some UI stuff, but we're actually getting there. We're really, really close, right? So we have to give min width here, and we have to say cursor pointer, a transition duration of 200, so just increase the transition duration, and the timing function is going to be ease out. And the reason we are giving this transition is because we're going to have a scaling effect when you hover over each and every single thumbnail. But on a bigger screen, on a medium screen, we're increasing the height to be 36, and we're also going to increase the min width, and it's going to be a custom value again of 260 pixels. And we're going to have that scaling animation, which is going to be scale, and it's going to say 105, and this is only going to happen on a medium breakpoint, by the way. So right now it's not going to work because we are not on a medium breakpoint, so we only want to scale on a medium breakpoint. And here we go. So all these thumbnails is actually scaling. We can actually scroll through the thumbnails. And if you're Windows, so we're actually having this really bad scroll bar, right? And we don't need that scroll bar. Now, how do we remove scroll bar? Again, we're going to be using a package called scroll bar hide Tailwind. Scroll bar hide, because in Tailwind we don't have a utility class to hide it. We can hide it using the normal CSS way, but again, it's really easy to use this package because it's really nice. We can actually use, and we are also going to be using one package for, and as you can see, it actually hides the scroll bar. We're also going to be using one package for our custom scroll bar, so that's going to be a different package. So we're just going to copy this, go back to our code, just paste this in, and go back to our app. And let's just remove this scroll bar. The way we actually do this is first we actually need to add this to the plugins. So again, it's a plugin, so make sure we need to add this. So let's go to our Tailwind config and put an arrow here and add another plugin, and let's just save this now. And now we'll have a utility class called scroll bar hide. So what we can do is go inside of our row, because remember it's going to be inside of a row, and here the container, right? This is our container. So here is where we need to say scroll bar hide, and we have this custom class now, scroll bar hide. So if I actually save this and we go back, we wouldn't see any scroll bar anymore. You can see there's no scroll bar anymore. So that scroll bar is actually gone. So that annoying scroll bar, we have removed it, right? And since you are actually here, let's create this custom scroll bar as well. So we can change this scroll bar to a custom scroll bar. And the way we can actually do that is, again, install another package called scroll bar. So it's called scroll bar Tailwind. Okay, it's this package, Tailwind scroll bar. And this is again a scroll bar plugin. Again, this is going to be a dev dependency. So we'll just go here and install this again. And again, copy this plugin thing here, right? Again, go back to our Tailwind config and paste this as a third plugin here, and this gives us, and you can look at the documentation. There's a live version they have created. So if we look at the live version, you can see we have these custom scroll bars, instead of these default ones. Especially if you're on Windows, like I hate the Windows scroll bars, the default ones. They're really, really ugly. So we need to change the scroll bar, right? So to change the default scroll bar on this one, right, what we can do is we can actually go to our global CSS, right? And we can actually apply some stylings here inside of our body. And the stylings we're actually going to apply is, we're going to say, so first of all, we're going to use important, right? And it's going to give us these classes called, so there's two types of scroll bar. There's a thin one and there's a thick one. So let me use the thick one and show you guys first. So I'm going to say important scroll bar, right? Another class is scroll bar and it's called track, right? And I want the track to be transparent. And the third one, which you want to apply, is scroll bar thumb, and we want the thumb to be red of 600, just to give it a Netflixy look, you know. So if I actually save that, boom, here we go. We have the scroll bar. And the reason I did this inside of the body is because this scroll bar is actually in the body, right? This applies in the body. And right now it's really thick. So to make sure that it's not that thick, all we can do is actually make this thin. And if I do that, we have a thin scroll bar. So we have our custom scroll bar, and we remove the ugly default scroll bar, and this is all working. This is really looking really nice now. Now all we have to do is actually keep working on this. So, and we need to use important, so we need to use the exclamation marks, and what these exclamation marks mean is it actually gives a important style inside it. So if I actually don't use this, if I do it like this, you can see that this is not important anymore. So we need to make sure to put this exclamation. Whenever you want to put important, all you have to do is before the styling, you have to say an exclamation mark, which means it's going to say it's important. That's how you do it in Tailwind. So this is working. Now let's go back to our thumbnail, sorry, the row component, and let's keep styling this, you know, because we're actually not done with our thumbnail, you know. So let's in the thumbnail, I mean, we're done with our thumbnail, but not the row component. So let's go back to our row. We are already inside of row. Now inside of our row, let me just quickly open my row. And there's one more thing I missed actually, which is inside of our thumbnail, because we're going to be fetching some information from Firebase, we want to have an additional type of document data, right? And it's not gonna be there right now, but just for reference, I'm gonna keep it. You know, the reason is because this is gonna be from when using Firebase. So I'm just gonna say when using Firebase, and I'm gonna explain this later on why we need the document data stuff, so it doesn't give us any errors. So I'm just gonna keep it for now, just as a reference. Okay, now let's get back to our row, and for the row as well, it's gonna be the same. So if I go to my thumbnail, I'm actually copy this quickly and go to row, actually paste this in here, and this is gonna be an array here instead of just document data. So now for our row, what we want to basically do is we want to keep track of the scrollable thing, right? And we also want some spacing between each and every single row, and we want to make sure to add these arrows so we can actually scroll through this scrollable content, because this is actually really nice experience, right? The user experience increases rather than scrolling like this, right? So just click on the buttons and you can scroll it that way, which is really nice user experience. So to actually implement that, what we can do is we can go here on the top and we can have a row reference, right? And we're going to be using a useRef hook, which is a quite performant React hook, you know, when it comes to when it's compared to useState. So if you have never used it, it's very simple to use. All we have to say is you have to provide a default value, and again, when we are using TypeScript, so we need to provide what type of because this reference is going to be attached to this container basically, which means it's going to be attached to this container here, right here. So we're going to attach the reference to this container, which is going to be row ref here. So which means this is a div, right? And this is, as we can see, the type of this div is actually a HTML div element. So that's exactly what I'm saying. So I'm actually applying this type here, because if you don't apply this type and when you're working with this, it's going to error out. Let's actually see if it actually errors out, and that would be a good use case then. Okay, so now we can have another, we need to have another piece of state which is going to be isMoved, and what that will mean is that by default, if I go back to the application, we can actually see it's not showing me a left arrow, right? It's only showing me a right one. So by default, we're not going to see any left arrow, but only when you scroll through, and isMoved is going to become true, so we're going to actually see the left arrow, and then so on like that, and then we can scroll like this. And this is what we want here. So we're going to have a piece of state which tracks that, and we're going to say set isMoved and it's going to say useState, and again it's a Boolean value. So we're just going to say by default it's going to be false, right? And now we're going to have a function, and now this function is going to run every single time when we click on either of these icons, right? So we have these icons. What we can do is select both of them together, have an on click, and the function is going to be called it's going to be a function, and it's going to be an inline function like this, and we're going to say handle, and we're going to say handle click like this, and we're also going to send in a string. So for the first one we're going to say send left, and for the second one we're going to send right. And the reason we are actually doing this because we're going to write this custom function here, and we're going to say const handle click right, because we created this function, and for some reason my VS Code is bugging out right now. It's bugging out, but so we have this handle click function, right, and it's going to be a function like this, and it's going to accept a direction. Let me see if it works right now. It's bugging out right now. I mean, at this point, if something like this happens, what I like to do is I like to close my application. You know, just close them. So I mean, closing is actually taking. So let me just quit anyway, and let's just open this back again. And let's see. Let's open it back again. So if something like this ever happens, you can do something like this and then run the server again. So I'm just going to say npm run dev again, because the server is going to be cut when you close the app, right? So now we're getting errors here, right? But because it's not expecting any arguments, right? Because you're using TypeScript, so it gives us these errors. And TypeScript is telling us that the function does not accept any arguments. So we need to make sure that this accepts an argument of direction, and it's going to be string, right? Because this is actually a direction, left or right. Where are we clicking, right? If you're clicking right, we want to move towards the right, right? And the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to say set is moved to actually true. That's the first thing we want to say. So we want to make sure that our set is moved to true, because of course we want to make sure that it's true, right? Because we're moving. And then we're going to see, we're going to use our row reference, right? And we're going to check the current, right? And now we're going to have something called a row reference.current. Now, what does row reference.current contain? It has these different values. So if I actually just do row reference.current, this should actually give me, I don't know why TypeScript is not giving me, but what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to say const row reference.current, right? And if I go here, this should basically, and the reason, yeah, so this is a really good point. This is why we had the type in there. The reason we are not actually seeing any types IntelliSense, because when you're not using TypeScript, we are using TypeScript, but we are not providing types here. This is the reason we needed the type, right? So if I put back that type again, which I removed for the reference here, right? It was HTML div element, if you remember, right? And now if I put dot here, we get all the types. We get the good IntelliSense here. So this is the reason we want to use types, because of this specific reason. So we can see what stuff we have inside of the objects and the functions, you know. Now here, I want to access two variables. So if I press this, now I want to access two variables here. I want to access the scroll left one, which is scroll left, and we can see this is a variable inside of this current object. And then we want to also access client width, something called client width. So I want to access these two, and then I want to create a variable called scroll2, and what this is going to do is going to actually check the type, check the direction, check the direction if it's actually left. Let's say if the direction is actually left, right, then it's gonna make sure to subtract the client width, and I'm gonna explain what the client width and the scroll left is basically. Otherwise, it's actually gonna add the client width, right? So this is what this scroll2 variable is gonna do. And then the last thing we want to do is we want to say row reference, because we already have that. And then we want to say dot current, and then we want to run this function called scroll2, so it actually scrolls us, right? And scroll to function accepts two objects. The first one is the options. So we want to say where we want to scroll to, right? We can scroll to top, we can scroll to left, right? If we want to scroll to the left, right? And the left needs to be the same, the value we want to scroll towards from the left side is going to be the same value as we calculated here, right? And the second thing here is going to be actually a behavior, as you can see. And the behavior means what type of behavior. Is it going to be a smooth or is it going to be an auto? So we're going to say smooth, because you want to smoothly move towards the right like this, right? So this means there's a smooth behavior happening here. And we're just going to quickly save it. Now let's first see if it actually works. And right now we have to fix the arrows as well, because we messed up the arrows too. So we need to fix up both of these arrows basically. Both of these arrows, by the way, they're gonna be inside of this big div, right? And they're gonna have some class names. So we didn't yet finish this. What we're gonna do is we're gonna have so first thing we can do is we can copy this both, okay? At the same time, open our backticks, and because we're gonna use template strings. Mistake, I forgot to copy them. Okay, copy them now, and now I can paste it there. And what we want to actually do here is we want to open our so we want to type a variable here, and we're going to check if it is actually moved, right? Which means I want this to be hidden, and this is only done for this one, by the way. So it's not done for both of them. It's only done for the left arrow, because you don't want to hide the right arrow, right? So we don't want to actually do this for the right one, only for the left one, right? And let me actually see if I have right styling here, because I might have messed up the styling somewhere. So I have the correct styling here, which is correct actually. Now, yeah, so actually I am seeing the button, but I'm only seeing the right arrow, right? The problem, what we messed up, right? What we actually messed up is, instead of saying right to, we said left to, because it's position absolute here, right? So we need to say from right we want this to be 2. So they're actually on the same place right now. And now we can see the arrows here. And we don't see the left arrow by default because we're actually hiding it right now. And now if I click on this, here we go. It works exactly like how we want it to work, right? You can click on these. We just need some spacing between the collections themselves. And the titles are not rendering properly. So we need to make sure that the titles are there as well. You see, we actually messed up my title somewhere. And so we need to make sure that our titles are rendering properly as well. So that's all we need to make sure. You know, and we have all the styling in place, and we can see it works exactly like that. So what we actually did and what we actually implemented in this function is that we have a function called handle click, right? What we did is we got the direction depending on where the user clicks, on the right or on the left. We set our piece of state is moved to true, and we get the current object from the reference, and the reference means this reference, this whole container div here, this whole row. And what we actually did is we created a variable called scroll to. So how much do you want to scroll to by, right? So what we did is we're taking the width of this screen, right? The client width. This is actually the client width, right? This is actually the client width. We're actually taking this, and when I actually click here, let's say I click back, it's actually decreasing by this many client widths, right? And that's what's actually happening every single time when you click here, right? And of course, since there are no more, and when the scroll left actually becomes like 0, there's no more scroll left remaining here. And the way we can actually check this out is by just saying, so if I did console log right now, and if I do console log of a row reference of row reference dot current dot scroll left, right? And it's saying it can be undefined, it can be null. So we just add this optional here to make sure that it's actually not null. And the other one we need is the client width, right? So you can say client width. And let's just save this, and let's just go right now, and let's see what the values are. So if I actually refresh right now, and this is the reason I was saying can be null. And let me just quickly remove it, refresh now. Let me put this back again. So right now we can see our scroll left is actually 0, right? And our client width is 1672 pixels. This is the width of this whole screen, right? Now if I actually click here, and because our scroll left is actually 0, right? What happens is if you actually click here, what we want to do is the left is scroll to, and if you calculate the scroll to manually, and we are clicking on the right direction, so the directions actually should be right? Which means this condition should be true, and scroll left is 0, and the client width is 1672, which means 0 plus 1672. So it means the scroll to variable is going to be 1672, right? So if I actually click here, it means it's actually going to move by 1672 pixels, right? Which is what we want, right? Which is correct. Now again it's gonna be like so again now right now when you click again, it's gonna be this should be updated. So if I click again, this is actually not updating. This should be updating. Somehow it's not updating right now. But what I'm trying to say, again, when I click here twice again, what should happen is this should become double, right? And when I actually click on the left side, what happens is the direction is left, which means the scroll left, which was 0, right? Now it should be 1672, right? Because think about it, right? Because we added to the scroll left was 0, and when we actually scroll to the right, it became 1672. Now it should be 0. Now it should be 1672, the scroll left, I mean, and the client width should be twice, right? And you can guess it, right? So you can guess the idea what's gonna happen when you click back again. So it's gonna again, when you click back, it's gonna actually do 1672 again. So every time when you do this, actually gets your current client width, which is your current screen size, which is what I explained earlier, right? So I refresh this now again. If I uncomment this, let's refresh this, and if I uncomment this now, we can see right now the client width is actually changed to 935, right? If I do this again to a very small screen, the client width again changed to 740, which means the client width actually changes every time. And when we actually click here, this is what happens. So what happens is actually moves you by that client width, right? That's what actually happens here every single time. So that's all we are doing. So we wrote this custom function called handle click to make sure that this is actually scrollable. Now let's actually fix the headings not displaying and some other stuff. So let's actually go back to our index, and I think the section needs to have some sort of space Y, right? Because we actually didn't do any space Y for our section here. So for our section, we only want the space Y to be on a medium breakpoint. So we want to say space Y of 24 for our section. So actually do that. Here we go. Immediately we actually see but we have some background issue now which we need to fix, right? So but right now we actually see the titles and everything clearly, and we have it scrollable. So this is working too. So we're actually very close to the end of day 1. We're very, very close, and we can work on the model tomorrow, and the day 2 we can build the login and authentication and the model, and then we can work on the Stripe the 3rd day, you know. So that day it can be a 3-day build, and everyone can understand all these things. So we can work on the model stuff tomorrow. But this is really, really cool, right? So we can have this working, this implementation is working, everything's nice. But let's fix this background stuff. Let's see why this is not actually applying. Let me go to global CSS. Let's see if we actually missed something here. So if you actually go back to our finished build, we see we have a beautiful background blending in, right? But for us right now, that's not working right now. So let me just go to my Tailwind config in my finished build, because I think we actually added a custom gradient, but I think I didn't. Yeah, so we actually added a custom gradient. That's why it's this background actually not working, because right now here this background which we are applying, this is not the background we should be applying. So it's actually a custom background we applied, and it's actually the Netflix one. So all we have to do is, for that to make it work, we have to go to our styles and our globals, and we have to get this linear, sorry, not globals, my bad. We have to go to our Tailwind config, and we have to get this background image, and we have to make sure that it's in the extend object. So I'll go into my Tailwind, and inside of my extend here, we're gonna have this background image here, and this is gonna extend the Tailwind's default background image. And as soon as I actually save that, look at that, actually blends in. So before this, it's actually like this, and as soon as I actually add this, and here we go, it's actually blending. And this is what the Netflix they're actually applying to blend their banner image with the collections here, so we don't see the huge color background difference here, you know, and it's actually blending in very nicely, you know. And this is the background. So now if I actually hover over this inside of my index page, you can see this is the custom background which is applying, not the Tailwind one anymore. And I don't think we need these two as well, so we can just remove them as well, those two colors, so we don't need them because we have a custom now. So we have this complete. This is done, guys. So we are actually done for day one. This is completely responsive. You know, if I actually open the responsive tab, I can check it on different screen sizes, different phone sizes, and it's completely responsive, right? We can actually say iPad, you know, this is an iPad, this is how it looks on iPad. Can make it bigger screen, this iPhone, and it's completely responsive. We have all this server side rendered, and I need to remove my console log from the row component because this is undefined, so we need to remove that. So let us refresh. So we can see every time when we refresh, this is actually server side render, so there is no sort of loading, right? There is no loading which is happening. So these are all server side rendered thumbnails, you're getting, right? Tomorrow we're going to be building this modal functionality. So when we actually click here, the beautiful modal pops up and a trailer is playing, and we can actually add it to our database, and we're going to be actually connecting it. So actually before adding this to our database, we're actually going to be connecting and we're going to be writing our custom hooks, guys. So right now, today we didn't do any custom hooks, but tomorrow's build we're going to be writing our own use authentication hook, which is going to be a completely customized hook we're going to be creating. So if I actually show you all, it's right there in the hooks here. So it's called useauth.tsx. This is going to be a beautiful custom hook we're going to be creating, and it's going to be really powerful. And all this will be done in TypeScript, by the way. So we'll have these custom hooks, right? And we are also going to be connecting to Firebase. And one more thing before starting tomorrow's, so all of you are prepared for tomorrow. What I want all of you to do, it's a bit of a mouthful, sorry, is that create a project. So if you have never used Firebase, go to console.firebase.google.com and create a new project, add a project, right? Actually, let's just do it. I'll just do it right with you, or actually I'll just do it tomorrow, you know, starting tomorrow's day with this. So create a project, and if you can, upgrade to a Blaze plan. So if you have watched existing videos, just make sure we are going to be needing the Blaze plan for the Stripe Firebase extension to work, because we're going to be using the Stripe Firebase extension. But I'm gonna be showing everything from scratch. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, just wait till tomorrow. But just make sure that you're going to be needing your card. It's not going to be charging anyone. It's completely free, but you need to enter your card information in order to upgrade to a Blaze plan. But it's going to be free. It's free of course. It's not going to be charging. So that's going to be in day 2 tomorrow. But yeah, today, if you're watching till now and if you reached this till the end, we have done an insane job today, guys. This is really beautiful. We have created this beautiful UI, our homepage UI, completely responsive, completely server-side rendered, completely dynamic, you know, really beautiful, you know. Yeah, so the last thing we're going to be doing today is we're going to be actually deploying, and there's so many things that I just completely forgot. We're going to be deploying this, and then we're going to be continuing with this build tomorrow on. So we can actually deploy this, and you'll have a URL of your own, so you can show it to anyone or add it in your portfolio. So let's actually deploy this. Now let's go back to let's go to GitHub, Okay, and what we want to basically do is we want to create a new repository, and I'm just going to name it Netflix redesign, Netflix clone or YT. It's going to be for YouTube, and let's just keep it public, and I'll just create a repository. Okay, and I have this command. So after creating a new repository, what we want to do is we want to copy this command, go back to VS Code, and just make this bigger for now so we can actually see. And we want to actually paste this command right here. Right? You want to paste this command right here, and this is what this is going to do is going to attach this repository. It's going to link this repository to the code. And next thing we want to do is we want to say get status. So if you do get status, we have all these red files, right? So you want to commit these to the staging area, and you can either use this. And how I'm actually getting this is by using something called git lens, which is an extension you can install. You know, you'll get this source control thing, which you can do with GitHub. So I like to use the command line, but you can do it like this way too, but I like to use this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say git add dot, and what dot is going to do is going to add all the files to the staging area. And if I do get status again, you will see all the files are green now, right? Now what we can do is we can say commit, and we can say day 1 complete, right? Day 1 complete, git commit, just a message, day 1 complete. I'm going to commit all these files, and as soon as I commit, you can see the 24 changes it was actually showing us, it's gone now. So they are all committed now. The last thing we want to do is we want to say get push, right? And right now we want to copy this exact command, and we are already on the main branch. We can push this to the main branch, and as soon as I push this, refresh it here, and boom, here we go, we see our application. So this is what we want to do. Next thing we want to do is we want to actually deploy this. So you're going to be using Vercel to deploy this project. So if you're new to Vercel, again, create an account, log in with your GitHub, authenticate with your GitHub, then just click on new project, and it's going to show you a latest repository, which is the Netflix clone YT for me. So I'm just going to import this. Okay, and we're going to be having this environment variable. Now this is very important, so many people actually miss this part. So we have our environment variable, and it's going to be different local, and it's going to be different production. So on production, Vercel is going to handle this for us. So when you're deploying this, you have to before deploying, we have to add this next public API key right here. Next public API key right here, and we have to add this. Okay, so we click on add. And now we just have to click on deploy. We don't want to change anything, so because it detects everything and it optimizes the build for you. So all we have to do, all we want to do here is just we're going to click on deploy. So when we click on deploy, this is going to actually optimize this build, you know, and you can view the logs here. This is going to optimize the build, and it's actually going to deploy and give a really nice URL, which you can share, and then we're going to deploy this every time after we complete these things. So let's wait for it. It's gonna take its time deployment. And Vercel is really good for automatic deployments, because what happens, since it's linked with our GitHub account, every time when we push something to the main branch, what's gonna happen is actually automatically gonna deploy and trigger a redeployment on Vercel every time we do something. So that's really cool about Vercel, you know. And we can actually, it's really nice too, you know. The interface looks really nice. So you can see it actually optimizes, and because we are using TypeScript, if we run into any type errors, it's gonna error out the deployment, actually tell us to. And here we go, boom, it's deployed, and you see the congratulations. Go to our dashboard. This is where our dashboard, and you see we get 3 different URLs. So if I go to deployments, if I go to inspect deployment here, in the assigning domain section, you get 3 different URLs. Now we want to be using the custom domain, right? We don't want to be using the autumn, because this is going to change every time you deploy. So we're going to be using this custom domain, right? So let's actually go, and boom, here we go, guys. Congratulations if you reached this point. We actually deployed our beautiful application. Really, really sick UI, completely responsive, you know. And it's the end of day 1, guys. It's the end of day 1. And we're going to be building the other features of the application from tomorrow. So yeah, this is deployed, is done, and there are no errors. So we're done in one go, right? So I'll see you guys tomorrow then for the authentication portion, which is going to be super important. So stay focused, and if you can, try to upgrade to the Blaze plan today. And And yeah, I'll see you all tomorrow. Goodbye, guys.